have to know what it stands for. It's just like satisfying sounds.
Yes.
Audio.
I thought it was like a
sensory,
sensory
like something or
Oh,
it is
I thought
an
it was like
acronym
a
for
type
something,
of
but
performance you give.
No.
Or something.
No.
What?
Like a radio show, like a radio. I'd like ask me anything, or I don't. But then there's a few. I'm missing a few letters.
Hi, this is our host Ben Moorhead. I don't know anything about nothing.
You host. You introduce
a
us.
podcast, but
This is episode 5 of Before the
I was
Tones
worried
Drop
about
podcast.
being the dumb one.
No,
We are.
you are
We are
good.
not an ASMR podcast.
Sorry, Ben.
Don't pigeonhole us like that. We could be. Don't pigeonhole
All right,
us.
maybe in the future we'll have more satisfying sounds. For now, you get us. Today we got Paul Hendricksen. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I am honestly, I'm super excited to be here. I know I told you guys earlier that when I saw your first episode, I seriously, I'm like, I want to be in on that. That's cool, and it's been really cool. This is, what'd you say, 5?
Yeah.
We're 5.
So it's
Month
been,
at a time.
It's been really cool watching, even in those 4 episodes, how much you guys have grown, just from that first one to the 4th one.
Yeah.
And no, I'm seriously happy to be here. I was like, I was driving over here, and I'm like, God, I'm kind of nervous.
Right? Yeah.
But you know.
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, it's going to be seen by like
That's really nice to hear.
tens of
from,
people.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're all your
all
family
10 of
too.
them. You know?
All 10.
And my
My
mom.
mom says, our moms have just been
Oh my
They love
God,
elated.
sure.
That,
They don't know
yeah.
what's
I've debated.
Honestly, I don't know if my mom's if she's watching an episode.
Great
Maybe
promotion
hey, Mom,
there,
you should
Phil.
watch an episode. Just get with the
I
times.
actually debated whether I was going to tell my mom or any family members that I was doing this.
Yeah, I remember.
We'll see how it turns out.
I remember you texting me, and that's the idea. I'm like, oh well, Paul does everything with peer support, been on the job while he'd be a good candidate, and then also there's something about it's like people that want to be here because then they come prepared, they bring us good content. Like Dusty was really prepared, and obviously George Lindblade has 150
His walking
years.
content.
Thanks for
to prepare.
having me on right after George Lindblade.
Great follow-up.
Yeah, follow that
like
up.
The most interesting man in the world, and then you got me. Like, well,
Second most interesting. That's great.
10 minutes. Now what do we do?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and give you a quick biography.
Yes.
Been on the job for 20 years.
Oh, 17 and a half, August of 05.
Okay.
Yep.
So you came on. Before that, worked at SPI a while.
Correct.
How long you been a paramedic?
I got my license in early part of 2000.
Okay.
So 22 years.
Yep.
Got hired by SPI in May of 2000. Worked there full time for 5 years.
Yeah,
and then got hired on the fire department.
Yeah, let's see on the outline. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
When I started, you were out at 8s. Were you third? Or you drive out at 8s?
No,
and
then
third. When I was on probation, I remember that was the only time we worked together. Is when you took Jesse's job driving when Jesse got promoted.
Yeah, that's right.
And then
Wow. Huge shoes to fill.
I know.
No,
Huge
yeah.
pants
Like,
to fill.
literally.
Huge shirt to fill.
Yeah, you
Huge seat to fill.
Just a huge
Yep.
void.
Just huge.
Period.
and then
Large, very large.
And then recently promoted this last year.
Correct.
And now out at 6s
Yep.
with Shane and Tom.
Lieutenant out at 6s with Shane Ewell and Tom Parrott. Yeah,
How's that going?
Loving it. I'm just so fortunate to be assigned to a great station and a
cool.
good crew that really has required minimal intervention on my part. They're pretty self-sufficient, so it makes my job way easier. Like they always say, your crew, can make or break the officer, and that's that is so true. They can make your life miserable if you're not careful, if you don't treat them right. So
Sure.
but yeah, I'm having a blast.
Oh,
Love
perfect.
It. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, it's cool. I always like 6s.
Dude, it's like its own hometown firehouse.
Yeah.
I mean, we all kind of have that, with the people you work with in your district, but like 6s, you got a classic firehouse basically,
and that's
just
what
like
I
the
always tell
anchor of that
people.
community.
It's actually the only station we have that I feel is a firehouse.
Yes.
Everywhere else, and not knocking the other stations because they're all unique in their own certain way, but but they're fire stations.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, this is a firehouse.
Well, it's like, you know, it's still, I mean, they did a fantastic job when they remodeled it. So, you know, left the, you know, the old woodwork is gorgeous in there, the old brick. So yeah, it's cozier, but yes, you feel like it's an old station.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus like Forest, I love Forest, but you know it's big, it's wide open, it's modern, it's bright, it's you know all this, you know, and it's right, but yes, it is a fire station versus you know that's a firehouse which you guys have. It's actually you know looking or spending time or floating there was at one of my favorite stations just because the station itself was so cool. You know,
I was interested to see when we came and did kind of our pre-work with you. How they did the sprinkler system and stuff in there, because I don't think I'd really been in there since it got all the way done, but they did a good job like hiding it. Like, you know, I was kind of worried about the piping a little bit, like how it was going to look in there. And I'm not even there, you know, but I was like, man, it's kind of, I don't want to don't mess with it.
Right. But, you're right. I mean, it's, you know, it's obviously something that they added on, you know, but I think they did as good a job as they could trying to make it blend in.
Yeah,
with single outsider's perspective, I think they did.
Yeah. It's a single engine company, but you guys are plenty busy out there. Morningside's getting busier. I know you guys' runs are going up.
Second busiest station in the city.
Some good street cred.
Yeah, but that's one rig. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not split up between any other rigs.
Yeah, we
that's
don't
one
get
rig.
Off.
No. And we hear all of it usually because I'm at threes and I'm trying to sleep comfortably, and then the medic's got to go out. I'm like, oh, I
go to six.
Quiet. No.
Going from threes to sixes, that's probably the biggest adjustment I've had to make is the call volume, which I love. I still love doing that aspect of it, but the sleep at night has gone down considerably since I've gone there.
Yeah,
so.
And that's something we're going to talk about later when we get to peer support stuff, just the effects of, you know, when you get into a good run of shifts where maybe you don't get as much sleep and what sleep interruption looks like long term. And But before we do that, let's go. I'm going to go as back as far as you want to go. If you want to go to, like, you know, high school, did you want to be a fireman when you were 5 years old? When did you kind of know this is the profession you wanted to get in, and then talk about a little before that, because I know you kind of had an interesting career change.
Yeah, I followed a pretty atypical route. And there's always been a little part of me that has felt kind of bad about that, because it seems like most guys that you talk to, you know, they grew up since they were 5 years old, they wanted to be firefighters, you know, and this is their chosen path. And I don't know, my life branches took all kinds of deviations and so on. It took me a long time to end up here, but I'm super glad I did. But yeah, born and raised in Omaha. Pretty uneventful childhood. I know, when I was a kid growing up, I wanted to do one of two things. I wanted to be a football player. I wanted to play for the Cornhuskers, obviously. Or I wanted to be a rock star. Music was always a huge part of my life. And I went to my first concert when I was 8 years old. I went to see KISS.
Nice. Oh man, there you go.
In Omaha, my dad took me and a friend, and it was awesome. And honestly, at the risk of sounding melodramatic, it changed my life. When I went to see them, I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know? But
I had a similar experience with Rockestra in Sioux City, Iowa. The rock orchestra.
Yeah.
You pick up the cello, then you're like, I need a cello.
I don't know if any of you guys would
I get a violin for
did
Christmas.
that years ago, and that was a thing.
I bet Gene hung out with a couple of those cats.
It could be, yeah.
Actually
So I was like, sorry, whenever you're done.
Sorry, I'm done interrupting you. I was taking a look.
It's the Ben Moorhead Show. Welcome.
Taking a bad shot at a joke. But.
And we'll talk about that later, too, about, like, the art of listening to people and not talking over them.
That'd be good for one of us.
I'll take a little lesson today.
No, you're fine. I'm just along for the ride.
So you're at KISS, you're hanging out with Gene Simmons backstage, you're 8 years old.
Yeah,
Continue.
but
putting on the makeup, just getting.
So, but
after.
you know, and so I was kind of the jock guy up until about, I started playing drums when I was 8, and I absolutely loved it, and to this day I still do. I still love drums, but you know, as you get older and start having friends over and stuff, you can't really play songs on the drums and have them recognize it. You know, like check this out. You know, recognize that, huh?
That's Freebird.
Yeah, exactly. So my mom had been she had signed up for guitar lessons, and she had an old little acoustic guitar sitting around that. It was just kind of sitting there, and I would occasionally pick it up and start plinking around on it, and like, oh, this is super cool. So when I was about 13, I switched to guitar and never looked back. Nice. Absolutely loved it, yeah. So, but yeah, you know, even in high school, I played football up until, football and baseball up until my junior year, and that was kind of when music took over, and that's what I wanted to do. So, but, you know, I can remember having talks with my mom and saying, you know, my mom and dad were so understanding, and I put them through all kinds of tests, you know. But I can remember talking to my mom about what I was going to do after high school, and I said, I'm going to move to L.A., and I'm going to join a band, and I'm going to be a rock star. I mean, that's, you know.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And, you know, bless her heart, she... Okay. Have you considered, though? College was not on my radar. A desk job was not, you know, none of that stuff. That's what I wanted to do. So about halfway through my senior year, I was talking to my guidance counselor in high school and kind of telling him what I wanted to do. And he said, hang on a second. And he wheeled his chair back and he grabbed a course catalog for Northeast Community College. It's a 2-year school up in Norfolk. And he said, I think they have some kind of music related something. Let me take a look. And he thumbed through this catalog and he said, yeah, here it is. And he showed it to me, and it was an associate's degree in audio recording technology. And I read through the description of the program, and it was like, you know, it was
just tripped a trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an epiphany. I'm like, that's what I want to do. So it worked out great. You know, Mom and Dad got to see me go to college.
Oh, thank God.
I got to still be, you know, seriously involved with music as a career. So it worked out really well.
Yeah.
And then once I graduated college, a guy that I had gone to school with that was in the same program as me, he had become a partner at a recording studio here in Sioux City. And when I graduated, he asked me if I wanted to become partners as well. And I didn't have anything else lined up, so I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
So that's what landed you here, huh?
So that's how I got here, yeah. Okay. Did the recording studio thing for a few years. You know, I had played in and out of bands, you know, through high school and college. Nothing that ever amounted to anything, you know, other than in our minds.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Was your studio? Were you just like, was that just essentially renting and running studio time and a soundboard, or did you guys actually have a label?
It was Demographic Productions. We actually owned the studio. It was in the basement of Flood Music, which is on Fifth Street. It's not there anymore. It's a law firm, white building, 410 Fifth Street.
Wow. Okay.
But it was in the basement of Flood Music. And we did, you know, jingles for radio. We did demo tapes for bands. You know, anything and everything in the recording medium. We had an old analog 16-track tape machine, and yeah, it was awesome. But to be honest, you know, looking back now, it was difficult, if not impossible, to make a living doing that in Sioux City. There just wasn't enough demand for it.
Enough big enough market kind of thing. Yeah.
So
what did you? So jingles. So is anything like, I don't know what I mean. What's an example of a jingle? Like for like businesses,
we would recognize,
like anything like local or anything we'd recognize, or just kind of. Anything that got used?
Yes, there was some stuff that got some radio play. We did some stuff for Wayne State College, Wells Blue Bunny. They'd done a few for that. So yeah, a jingle is essentially, it can be either a bed of music or music with lyrics that you know, that sells your product.
Like the Whopper commercials?
Yeah,
Stop.
Exactly.
Please, God. This has invaded every facet of life now. And it's like, God. I have to get Burger King now.
Ryan, can you play a Whopper commercial in the middle of this podcast?
Nobody wants that.
No.
They get it enough everywhere else.
In the middle of Paul time. Whopper.
Stop. I knew you were. I knew he was going to do this.
Now
he was going to work it into this somehow.
Because there was
there's
a guy, there's a Paul like in a basement of some law firm someplace at a small recording studio that got, that somebody was approached and said, hey, we want to, here's the thing, we want to jingle. And they come up with it.
And guess how he wrote that? He woke up the night after partying and the guy woke him up and said, dude, we got to write this jingle for this thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, Whopper, double Whopper, triple Whopper, junior Whopper. Whopper. Done. That's it.
How do you end it?
Awesome. Oh, yeah. And they just ate it up. And
you rule.
And
you worked your butt off to try and get jingles done.
Right.
Yeah. And this
slaving over the lyrics
this
and the
bum
music.
wakes up and he's like, I got it over here. Writes it on a napkin from Burger King.
So you record the Whopper commercial and then you go to paramedic school.
What?
That's what I have here.
There's
I have
a jump.
Hey, way to tell Paul's story for him. Thank you, Ben.
Sorry. We got to keep it moving.
Well, he's hosting, so
That's fine. Yeah. You let George talk for 2.5 hours, but I get a half
10
hour.
minutes.
That's cool.
10 minutes at a time.
15.
We got to sell advertisement.
So
Hey, I just got an idea.
go ahead.
Sponsorship from BK?
No. Paul can write a jingle for the podcast.
Oh my God. Done.
Yeah, all in.
Right?
Done.
Yeah.
All in.
There it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
I get to do the lyrics now.
Podcast.
And they're not going to have any Whopper
Stupid
at all or Burger
waste
King.
of time podcast.
Ben Moorhead's
Nailed it,
podcast.
yeah.
Welcome to Born Movie.
Do not listen to us. So then you go to paramedic school.
You don't have to say that.
No.
Wrong again, Ben.
I'm just following the outline.
What are you doing?
I'm following the outline.
Following the outline.
Take the outline away from me. Eventually, yes.
Okay, paramedic school.
So when I was working at the recording studio, again, I'm a guitar player, not playing in a band currently, and there was a band in Sioux City called The Rage, and they were like semi-popular, in the area.
They were all the rage, you would say?
They were all the rage, okay. Yes, absolutely. But they...
Sorry.
The guitar player had come down to the recording studio. One of the guitar players had come down to the recording studio one day and asked me if I knew of anybody that played bass because they were looking for a new bass player. And I'm like, I gave him a couple names of guys that I knew that played bass, but they were currently in other bands and weren't available. So long story short, they asked me if I would be willing to switch from guitar to bass, and like, yeah, I'll try it. Similar instruments. So I did. I switched over to bass guitar. They gave me all of the songs on their set list, and I learned them. Learned the bass parts to them, and we got together and practiced and went right down the songs.
Okay.
And it was
learning the music.
Yeah.
Did they have printout like sheet music that they did, or was it all off listen and kind of flow with?
Did you have tab? It was tab charts, chord charts,
tabs
or is it
probably
just
weren't.
like this is the song? Go listen to it.
Yeah, I always learned everything by ear.
Yeah,
sure.
I can't read music.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You weren't a band choir kid?
No.
Okay.
No. I took lessons and I tried to learn to read music, but I don't know, it was weird. Like my brain, as I was like plunking along trying to read it, my brain would hear it, and it was just easier for me to play back what I just heard,
Sure,
as opposed to what's written on the paper, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to explain. I mean, like if you have a musical ear, it makes sense, I guess.
Yes.
But if you don't, it
what
seems
notes
really
to play
foreign.
just from listening after learning notes. I mean, Justin Johnson, that's kind of how he plays. I've watched him play, and
that's
he can listen, and
I
he's
think
like,
that's
that's this tab, or
exactly
this chord or whatever.
Right.
That's even as a younger, because how much playing do you still do now?
I still plink around a little bit
because I know I mean music as far as being in band and all that. So yes, I can read music. I can't anymore because it's essentially forgot. I was always bass clef in band, playing trombone, tuba, and stuff,
sure.
and then bass in jazz band, and then garage band when I was a kid and stuff too. But that was more learning it as far as bass guitar was by sound. I mean, where you literally went to the store, bought the CD for one song,
right,
and listened to it until and just listened and listened and listened and played and stuff. And that's how that's how you learn there. Fast forward 20 years later to play for bass in church, I still can't really read music, and it's there's some tab charts, but the chord reduction, like a chord chart now. Okay. So it's just this chord, but to correlate, I know that chord is this fret.
Means this.
Yes. Yeah, and it goes, so the older me is more comfortable playing off a chord reduction and knowing that, and still listening to the songs and play with the chord reduction, kind of read music, whereas the young me was just like, learn it all,
So I was the opposite. Yeah. I know how to read music, and I still can read music. Just from like watching a lot, like you were talking in church, like timing and then notes. I know how to read all that. Switching to like tablature was like harder for me,
right?
Because I knew how to read music. So like when I plunk on the guitar, I try to do tabs. It's so weird to me because it's it's reversed basically with how the structuring of notes are.
Right.
The tabs upside down to me because of learning to read music.
Yeah,
it's high to low, and then it goes low to high when you're reading tabs.
So I can read.
That's still yet out for debate. So,
have you seen "I Love You, Man" with Paul Rudd?
Oh, I love that movie.
Slapping the bass.
Please say slapping the bass.
Slapping the bass, man.
I don't.
He plays
there.
A little Rush.
But you love Rush.
You love Rush.
They love Rush.
They love Rush.
Yeah, Rush is what introduced me to like odd time signatures and.
Paul Rudd,
I had Exit Stage Left, and I would on album because back to your question.
What was the question?
Music
about learning
music,
about learning today or what format it was on, something like that. But I had Exit Stage Left on album, and I wore that thing out and just playing guitar to every song that was on there poorly. I mean, it wasn't note for note, but I had some semblance of similarity to the song. But and that was how you had to learn. When I was growing up, everything was on album or cassette, and it was awful. You would get a cassette copy of a song that had been dubbed 8, 10, 12, 20 times. And it was just, and you're trying to pick out individual parts to it, and you're like, I think they're playing this, I'm not sure. And it was awful. But now, I mean, with the advent of digital,
there's
just a whole new world.
You can
and Spotify, you don't even have to, with Spotify and all that, you don't have to go to the store and buy the CD anymore for the one song.
Yeah.
You just go, and then, when Napster came along, and that was a thing in LimeWire, you could just download the one song, But now Spotify, you just come up with the whole playlist and you sit there and just learn all the songs. And then the internet with all the, it used to be a scouring the internet to find a tab chart if you could or anything, or you had to go to the store and buy the books, the music, the tab book or whatever. And now everything is like, it's just right now. And there's so much, it's so readily available.
You can record something in like a tin can, and then with all the technology they have, just even for like people as hobbyists to turn that into like a song is ridiculous, and I don't even know the first thing about understanding it, but I like watch people do it sometimes on YouTube because I'm a nerd.
Yeah,
but
it's amazing.
It's like how
and oh man, we could have a whole invite me back sometime. We'll have an entire podcast
music theory with Paul,
because I've got my thoughts on music today versus back then. But I can remember sitting in my room as a kid, listening to to an Iron Maiden album on vinyl, trying to learn a guitar part, and so I'd what was that? So I have to like pick up the needle and kind of scoot it back just enough, and then I'd scratch it, and it was just a disaster. It's a wonder that you learn anything, But again, at the time, that was all you had. So you're like, well, I'll just figure it out. But
right on.
That's awesome. Okay,
so
you were jamming in all the rage.
Yeah, so I joined
big hair,
I joined the Rage
meshy
as a bass
tank tops
player.
and cut up jeans and getting after it.
This was I joined them in, I think it was '89. So this is kind of like on the tail end of the hair metal bands, which was the greatest era of music.
Hey man, you're not telling me anything I don't know, because I grew up, and thank God for my parents, man. They raised me listening to Poison, Guns N' Roses, all that,
Perfect.
But just great era. I wish I could have just stepped in time there for a little bit. But
it was an incredible incredible period in music and in life. But yeah, so we did all the hairband stuff, wore the spandex, and
love it.
You
know what I say all the time? I said, back when chicks like dudes who dress like chicks.
Exactly. Pretty much, yeah. But
I think you got some photos. You have to send Ryan. Ryan can throw them on the YouTube.
Yeah, I did. I dug some up for Ryan.
Oh man, nice. Beautiful.
It's weird. It's like an out of body experience. It's like looking at somebody else. It was just such a different period of my life.
Like a whole different life almost.
Yeah,
I bet,
exactly.
Right?
It was.
I mean, up to this point, it's like,
as compared to now, but back then it was the textbook rock and roll lifestyle. I mean, you didn't care about tomorrow or next week or retirement or anything like that.
I won't
it's
need
just
to.
like, where are we playing at tomorrow?
That's
that's
cool.
all that you were worried about. But it was awesome. I'm so glad that I honestly got to fulfill one of my childhood dreams, even if it was just on a local cover band level.
Yeah, but that's more than a lot of people end up doing anyway.
That's what I need to remind myself.
I wish I would have done that.
Right.
Like, well, you stepped into it at least. You
yes.
put a foot in it.
Yeah,
so.
And just had an absolute blast. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about that period of my life and just how much fun it was, and how I could never do it now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like you can do it. I don't know how some of these bands.
Drugs.
Yeah,
lots of drugs.
Still going.
Yeah, still going
that's
after.
Crazy.
Well, that's
long.
There's Paul Johnson who sings really well. Justin Johnson plays guitar.
Absolutely.
So you guys could start a fireman cover band.
I know.
Two Pauls and a Johnson.
So cool. Two
Pauls and a Johnson.
Good Lord.
Wow.
Is that taken?
I don't know.
No, I'm quite sure it's
I'm
not.
pretty sure you're
nope.
safe.
Yeah,
right.
pretty sure.
I'll book you a
Ben
gig at the
will not be
Marquee.
helping manage that at all.
I've thought about that, a little fire department band. That'd be kind of cool.
There's enough people that play enough instruments that we could probably get together like a 7 or 8 piece little group.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But,
I'm a poet and a lyricist, and
Yeah.
I can sing a little bit too. I like singing with Dad. We duet a lot at 3.
do you?
Oh yeah. Shout out to P Diddy. Oh man.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yep.
It's two Johnsons, so it could be 2 Johnsons and a Paul.
Why are we just? Can we turn
Just saying, there's options for the name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it is
anyway. So played with The Rage for a few years, and then played with another band called Street Legal for another couple of years, and that was similar type of music, but again, by that time the hair stuff was dying off. It was almost overnight that it just died.
Yeah, so, I guess going to paramedic school. So
Yeah.
where at
Still
what
trying
point?
to tie all this together.
So at what point did you? I mean, was it like slowly the band just kind of faded away? Did these guys continue on with somebody else? Did you step away? Where was the breaking where you're like,
Great question.
dude, I guess I have to get a real job?
Right.
Like
where
the
was
that?
Of the end.
Kind of
yeah.
thing. Yeah. Where was?
Yeah, if I remember right, our sound guy, the guy that ran sound for us, took a job with a country band because, about the time that hair was dying off, grunge was becoming huge, and Garth Brooks.
When where the
Garth
money
Brooks
was,
came
basically.
along. Yeah. Garth Brooks came along and ruined everything.
Yeah. It still is ruining everything.
So if
Sorry,
I remember
Dad.
right, he was the first one to go. The sound guy went to another band, and then a guitar player quit, and it just kind of fizzled, but it was time. It had run its course, and we tried to stay together for a while and kind of tried to adapt and play some of the newer music that was out, but it wasn't us.
And it wasn't where your heart was, probably.
No, not at all. Not at all. We were miserable playing some of the stuff that was becoming popular. Just
if you have an ear for music, you can hear that. I think you can hear when people are disingenuously playing stuff. It's like, this is garbage.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
they don't want to be playing
through the motions because they're like,
Yes.
it's on
Couldn't
the
agree
list
more.
of stuff they have
This
to
is
play.
trash.
Like,
This is just
let's just get through it so we
Yeah.
can get to the next song, which we really like playing. So
yeah. We're gonna play some old stuff now.
Yeah.
And that's what they like playing.
Yeah. So I was doing this. I was the guy that ran lights for us owned a body shop over in South Sioux, and I was working for him to make some extra money. We ended up selling the recording studio, and I took that money. And to this day, I don't know why I chose the paramedic part of it, but took the money from the sale of the studio and went back to school, and got my EMT and then my intermediate and then paramedic after that. So I really honestly don't know where that came from. I think it must have been like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I think I'll try that. You know,
Yeah.
Not that I had put
wild.
any thought into it at all. I'm like, oh, maybe I could be a paramedic. You know, I don't know. Let's try it. And here I am.
That worked out, I guess.
Yeah, it did.
Were you working as an EMT and then kind of while working go through school, or?
Yeah, so I volunteered over in South Sioux.
Yes. Cool.
When I was taking my intermediate class and then part of my paramedic class as well. Yeah, which it was a great experience. So glad I got to do that. You know, you guys have all done the volunteer thing, and it's you know, it has its pluses and minuses.
I think it makes you appreciate this a lot.
Absolutely, yes.
Exponentially.
Yeah, yeah.
Just coming from that.
So, so volunteered over in South Sioux, got hired at SPI, which was the only place that I wanted to work at when I got my paramedic license at the time. You know, SPI was like the place to be.
And for those listeners, SPI, Siouxland Paramedics,
Siouxland Paramedics
used to run the 911 ambulance service in town. They were a private health company, contract with the city, and then
911 and transfers.
Yes, 911 and transfers.
They were the only show in town.
Yep. Yeah. And then in 2018, Sioux City Fire Rescue took over the ambulance.
Yeah.
Took over 911.
Yes, 911.
Yes. Yep. And then non-emergency transport was like, I don't
third
know.
party.
Well, it was Siouxland for a while, because Siouxland was still in non-emergency transport, and then
like
Siouxland,
Midwest had crept its way,
and then Midwest came in, and Siouxland
others,
is
like Medicine in Motion.
SPI.
I've seen those a few times.
There's a couple.
But so no desire to try and go to Omaha and work as a paramedic or constable.
None at all.
It was like here.
Yeah, I was going to stay here and just bide my time until I got hired by SPI. You know.
So you were rooted here.
Yeah. And that was part of it too. This was, you know, for better or for worse, this was home.
Cool.
So, and it was awesome. I mean, super. The call volume at SPI is similar to what these guys are experiencing now on the ambulance side. It's just it's just brutal. It's, you know, but it was a great group of people, and you learn more in one shift there than you do in a whole year of school that you take.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
at what point was your work in SPI then, and when did you think, hey, I don't want to be just a paramedic now for the next 20 years. I want to do. I like that fire department.
Right. Yeah.
Gig. What kind of sparked that?
A guy that was on the fire department also worked at SPI part time, and he's pretty much the one that talked me into it. He said, you know, because he approached me, mentioned the fire department to me a few times, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to be a firefighter. You know, I'm fine right here. But he kind of kept hounding me and kind of planted the seed, if you will, you know, that, fire department has a much more solid future and, longevity and retirement and all of these things that when you're a single guy, you don't care about stuff like that, you know, but when you get a girlfriend and then a wife and then kids, you're like, oh, maybe I should start planning for my future a little bit, you know. So, so he essentially said, take the test. If you take if you test and get on the list, you don't have to accept it if you don't want to. So I'm like, yeah, I'll try it, and
which is great advice to anyone.
It really is,
because you're out 3 days of your life.
Yes.
And there are a couple hours, written, physical, interview. You can always turn the job down, but there's people that work here that said, I did it because my buddy at a bar filled out the application. He accidentally printed off a second copy.
Right.
That's and like now I'm working here. So
I got a friend I'm working on that before I met him, he had no connection to like the fire department, and now he's volunteering where he lives.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey buddy, what do you do? What are you thinking about the rest of your life?
Level,
you want to kick it up.
Kick it up a notch.
Not many people know like kind of what this career is, and then all of a sudden when you get exposed to it, it's like, this is really cool.
Or you're around people that are in it and they talk about how much they like enjoy it and love it, and you're like, that sounds kind of cool.
Absolutely. And I can remember that at SPI, you know, initially you get that when you become a paramedic, you know, that you get the Paragon thing going on, and you know, you show up on scene and you're like, you know, stand aside, guys, I got this, you know. which you soon learn that, you know, nothing could be further from the truth. You know, honestly, I used to think foolishly, I'm like, God, I bet those guys are so excited when they see us walk through the door, you know. And then, you know, now that I'm on the fire side of it, I'm like, oh God.
Well, yeah. Well, and some of that though, you know, and back, you know, when you were doing it,
back to like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, I'm like, oh,
well,
no.
and some of that though, to that, I mean, when you were doing it with SPI and stuff, we didn't have as many paramedics on the fire department on the fire rigs that we didn't, because it was all, you know, it was EMTs, and then you had a bunch of guys that were EMTIs, but we had very few paramedics unless they had already gone and got it or worked at SPI already part-time, and then we're on the fire department and we're paramedics there. It wasn't until we started, you know, we didn't have any ALS engines.
Oh, I know.
You know, that came along later, and now we have how many?
You talk about, there was a little bit of that feeling, to me
I
anyway,
think so,
where you're working a code
and
and there isn't an ambulance available for like 15 minutes because they're out in the county. SPI would be out in the county or something. And it's like, dude, when you walked in, you're like, okay, this is what we needed because we had no way to move this person.
Like I know when I started in 02, like we were a provisional I service. So you were supposed to have one guy that was at least an EMTI could start an IV. But there was a lot of times you had 3 basics on the rig, and that was it. So, I mean, so yes, when the paramedics showed up, we were like, woo! Yeah, like there was relief there to be like,
yeah, for sure.
Do stuff now because you are the paramagician that can do the stuff that you know we can't. But now it is different though because we do have so many more paramedics. Like how many rigs have at least one paramedic on it, and then working in the firehouse with the medic crews and the response. You know, so it's different because it used to be more SPI's here. Let's hand the patient over to you guys, and then we're going to step back and, you know, versus I think we interact, or there's a lot more, everybody still works on the patient.
It's so dynamic. It's
different now than you know, when you used to run
the service level.
Couldn't agree more.
Crazy,
Oh
right? Compared to
when you look back at how that was in the past, and at the time you thought, you know, and it was at the time, it was the best care that you could give, and you compare that to what we're doing now, and apples and oranges almost.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, there were, I don't know what, I mean, maybe a handful of paramedics when I got hired.
Yeah, there wasn't just
4 or 5, 6 maybe. It just wasn't a thing.
We're getting paramedic heavy. It's kind of slowly becoming. That's around the nation too. It's almost come to standard.
Finally hitting.
And there's places that it's the entrance requirement to be a paramedic to work for some fire departments. And not to, SPI had some phenomenal paramedics, and it seemed like there was like, I worked at SPI for a short amount of time right before it closed, and there were like SPI names, but then when it transferred over, there were people that like, no, this was my time. This is a sign to be done. We're still down to like just a handful of small people, and a lot of the leadership on the EMS division are old SPI employees. Right. But that's a lot of new faces, young people, new generations, and you know, there's that link from SPI to the fire department. You know, you work at SPI, get on the fire department. People use it as a stepping stone, and then even on EMS now, how many people work on the EMS division and then get a job offer on the fire department?
Kind of a natural progression,
and then those people are replaced, and it's kind of the cycle we've, whether on purpose or not, we've created.
Absolutely. But so I tested. I don't know what I did right, but I did something right and got on the list, and you know, got hired in 05, August of 05. So you know, like I said, I always felt kind of bad that, you know, here's this bozo come in, and, you know, this is his first time testing and gets on the list and gets hired, and there are guys, you know, you guys all know them too, guys that go all over the country testing, or at least through the Midwest, trying to get on a fire department. And, I don't know. I just kind of stumbled into it, and I'm so thankful I did. You know, because it's one of those moments in your life, at the risk of sounding melodramatic, it's one of those moments in your life where it completely changes the trajectory of your future. You know.
Well, that's you locked in. This is it's your career.
Yes,
I mean, there is
exactly.
no, like, you're locked. I mean, this is like, there's the stability, there's the everything. I think the relief that comes out, like, you're locked in, like, this is the next 30, you could be 30, 20 years, 25, 30 years or whatever, to get that call. Yeah. I mean, it is.
Relief
it's
is
a
a
big
great
thing.
word for it, because everything that I had done up to that point, even SPI, I mean, I had nothing in place, no plan in place for my future, and relief sums it up best. Just knowing that you that you're taken care of now, and that you're also taking care of your future and your wife and kids, and it's a game changer for sure.
Would you say, you're talking about, like, you just took the test because someone, I take it you're out nothing, but then once you made the list, did you get, like, way more excited?
Oh,
like, now I want it more
now
than
it's
anything.
like, okay,
This is
it's
real
go
think about it
time,
now.
right?
Go time.
Yeah,
and
it's funny how that works.
I was 35 when I got hired, and at the time the age limit was 38.
Okay.
And they had hired, I can't remember how many people. I think you and I were on the same list, weren't we? Or were you on the one
because my
before
list, because I got hired in 2002.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
So I think your guys' list might have been the one after, because I know, because we came on like 6 months after, like, Dusty and Jesse, and then you had, I think, like, Bukite and Larry, and I'm trying to remember who else. There was a third one with their group that got hired like a year after we did. So then it was somewhere in there was probably your list came on.
I can't remember
how long did you? I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
How long did you sit on the list before you got that call?
That's kind of where I was headed with that. Was I was on the list for a while, almost. I don't remember how close it was, but talking to Rick, a guy that I was on the list with, and he was my age. He's a little bit older. I'm like, and we were doing the math. And we had one more test in us before we hit the age limit thing. So I'm like, okay, we can test one more time. So we were kind of mentally preparing to test again, but then we got hired. So it's like, woohoo!
Yeah, and that's
don't
just
have
for
to worry about
people
that
don't know anything about it. Like, you can sit on a list for 2 years because it's a certified list for 2 years.
At the time,
depending
it was
on
a 2-year list. Yeah.
Depending on the departments where they're at with hiring,
you might not
get the
even
call.
get hired.
That might be why you don't get hired. It's just, it all depends where the department's
not
at.
Much
and
turnover.
So
a lot of ebb and.
But then that had to also psych you up too. Just like when I got on, seeing guys, I mean, they stay their whole career with Sioux City Fire, and like, I'd worked a couple other places that kind of bounce around after. This is the next step, getting to where I want to be. But like, for most of us, this is where we wanted to be, and then you get on, and you're like, that guy's been on since before I was born. It's cool to see that, and then generations of guys.
Yeah,
it's like, well, my dad worked there, I want to work there. Grandpa, great grandpa. It's like, it's so cool that we have that.
And then I'm not there yet, but you're kind of there with me to kind of become that senior veteran.
What are you saying? Yeah,
what
are you saying?
Well, no, that's like to be the 20-year guy to get hired. Because when I got hired, the guys that I had on probation, who are, way later in their career now, captains, assistant chiefs, whatever, but, whereas their drivers are newly promoted lieutenants and stuff with like 15 years on. To me, 15 years was like a long time. Like, oh man, that guy's seen some stuff, and then you had to see a guy that was the 20 or 25-year guy, and you're like, your eyes are getting this big. These are just like, oh man, this guy.
I'm under no illusion that 15 years is a short time. I got 20 left.
Yeah,
25 left. Sorry, 25.
But these are like salty left. Guys. Yeah. I come on the job at 21, so I mean, I got 34 years to till I can hit 55, retire. But yeah, so to now be in the blink of an eye, be a 20-year guy and sit there and like, man, I remember what it was like being on probation and looking at the guys that had 20. It doesn't feel like I'm a 20-year guy. I don't feel like
you're a 20-year guy.
You don't feel like an old guy, even though like I would have called myself an old guy when I got hired.
Oh, God,
but I'm not. But I don't feel like an
at
old
the
guy.
stage that you're at now. Yes.
Yeah. But you don't feel like
time is a flat circle.
Yeah.
All those guys said the same thing.
Probably.
I don't feel like that either.
I had a question for later. I'll bring it up now.
No.
Paul, you're 51?
54.
54.
Oh, shit, you are old.
I know. I told you.
That's
I didn't put you a day over 58. So that's pretty good.
Without pulling on your ripcord here, you look good. You're in good shape. I remember the few months we worked together. You're always working out. When did that kind of become a big part of your life, and knowing like if I'm gonna if I came on the career later and I'm going to stay healthy through this career, how important physical fitness was going to be for you and make it part of your routine.
Yeah, I think you just kind of answered the question yourself there. Just knowing that that I was kind of behind the 8 ball from an age standpoint, when I got hired, and seeing guys that get hired at 22, 24 years old and being invincible. And just knowing that if I, yes, this is my career now, and if I'm going to make it last, I'm going to have to do what I can to make sure I make it as long as I can and get the most out of my career. Yeah, absolutely.
So what with getting hired on the fire department then, that was 2005. So what was the take with family? Did you have kids at that point? What was the wife? What did she think of the whole thing? I mean,
Yeah, I was married. I got married in
We can edit this
early
out.
2000s.
2000.
I think the outline says 2002.
Yes, it was 02.
You were going to get
I
there.
knew that. Yeah. I got married in 02, first daughter in 03, and then I had my second daughter. She was born in February of 06, so I was on probation when my second daughter was born. Wow. So, and it was honestly, it was a pretty smooth transition because I hadn't even been working at SPI when I met my wife, so she kind of knew that old me. Mm-hmm. But she knew that working at SPI was a huge goal of mine. So when I got hired there, she was all for it. And a little bit of adjustment on the shift work, but again, she, bless her heart, she knew that that's what I wanted to do. So any bumps along the road, she was willing to put up with.
Nice,
because which makes a world of difference. And I'm super thankful that it was that way, because that is an issue with some guys that get hired. Getting acclimated to our schedule, and sometimes it can be rough on relationships, but I thankfully never had any of that. So.
Well, did you with that when you got hired and with having the kids and young and stuff, did you work on your off days? Did you stay home with the kids? What did you?
Yeah, I initially when they were, I'd worked. I stayed on with SPI part time for another 10 years, but it was very part time, and but most of the time I spent home with the kids, which again, our schedule is awesome from that aspect. I got to spend so much time with them at home, before they went off to school. Mm-hmm. that you can't ever get that time back.
No.
So thankful and fortunate that I got to do that.
Well, that's I think Ship gets to
I
do
myself,
that right
yeah,
now.
I'm playing daddy
I
daycare.
love the duck parade every day.
Dude.
I'm just gonna say, I wait every day for the duck parade.
Dude,
that is so fantastic.
It's tough though too, because of our schedule as well, because you're gone for a whole day. So he comes home from daycare yesterday, and she'll send me videos, and he walks to every room going, Dad. I'm like, why you send me that?
Don't
send me that. But dude, that's so awesome. But it's just the time you get to spend when you're not here, you can be as involved with things as you guys know.
Mm-hmm.
You can be as involved as you want. One of the best pieces of advice I got from a captain when I got on Sioux City here was, you can either race to your spot that you want to be at and lose a bunch with your personal life and family. There is no alternative to that if you choose to do that path.
Right.
You can't get that back. And I would strongly suggest to take your family in consideration. They're already making a sacrifice with us doing this job too. Just take that time and cherish it, because like you said, until you're in it, you don't realize it. And I thought I knew about it, and then you get into it and you're like, okay, I had no idea what I was talking
like Paul
about
said, hit it on it hard, that there is no getting that back when the kids are that little, and all the new things that they learn and the experiences that you can't, because once it's gone, you're gone. Right. And my oldest is, he's a senior in high school this year, a few months. It's going to be college and off, and my daughter will turn 15 here in May, and it's gone in the blink of an eye. And there's well, teenagers are a whole nother, that's a whole nother thing, but, you know, some days, you know, to go back when they were just, you know, and it was just the simplest things, of just being in the backyard and just pushing somebody in a swing, you know, and just, and that those days are gone and you don't get them back, you know, so
Absolutely. I preach that to anyone and everyone that will listen to the, you know, to the younger guys that haven't reached that stage yet, you know, and I understand the guys that work jobs on their days off.
Definitely.
You know,
for sure.
we all have reasons for doing what we do, you know, but if you can pull it off at all, if it's at all possible, you know, spend those days off with your kids at home, because you know, you know, my wife has always been very good about understanding, you know, like holidays, Christmas and Easter, and, you know, some of those that you have to work, like, that kind of stinks, but you can reschedule those. You know, you can do that the day before or the day after, but the, you know, the choir concerts and the softball games and all of that stuff, you can't reschedule that stuff. So.
I thought we were going to get into this a little later, but having experienced that with like my old man, you know, he had to travel around the state working. He didn't make a lot of my stuff, and it takes you until you get later into life to kind of understand where that's coming from. You know, it's coming from a good place. Like, he's trying to provide for his family. But he even says, like, he got to my younger sister, showed up way more for that stuff, made it like, but he changed jobs too, you know. He became fire chief instead of a state fire marshal.
Sure.
And now my little sister, it's like a whole new like set of parents for it, which it's good. But he said, dude, he's there for all of her stuff basically, and I'm happy for that.
Absolutely.
But but at the same time,
being
you're like,
in that position, you're like, it kind of does suck, you know.
A
lot of times dad not being in the stands at certain things or being able to, but they did a really good job of teaching me, like, there's a reason he's doing this, and it's for you.
That's just it.
It's for your kids, it's for your family. Totally understand it. His passion for the job, like, I would never take that away from any of us either. We're like, this is all I want to do. This is my life outside of my life. So
when we get to peer support, make sure we talk about then, like, the effects of job versus family, and you know, making sure how you separate and leave work at work, and
that's huge.
But
we'll get there.
So we keep. I crumpled up my outline.
that's good. It's how much better is this?
But I do want to. So you came on, if I remember right, you were with Garrett, John Rentschler,
and 5 of us,
and Pickle Rick.
Yes, Rick Schroeder, Garrett Soldati, John Rentschler, and Nick Roth.
And
myself.
Sweet.
What was, we'll go on tangent, what was, just real quick, what was young Nick Roth like? Because I've heard like Nick was like straight out of the basement, Nintendo 64, like, hey, I'm here.
Basement.
I've heard
if
that.
If he gets a hold of you,
so
I can't wait to see
Nick
what
will throw me through the wall.
Bongo mad.
He's Nick strong. But if you don't mind.
Nick, I love you.
Nick,
please don't hurt me.
Unfortunately, I didn't know Nick all that well, because Rick and I were on one shift and Nick, Garrett, and John were on another
that's right.
one. So I only knew Nick from the first 3 weeks. You know, it's hard to tell. But
all you heard was those guys are terrible, and all they heard was those guys are terrible.
Yeah. It was pretty cool, because Rick Schroeder and I came on together, and he and I had been really good friends for years before the fire department, and he and I just ended up testing at the same time and getting hired at the same time.
Wow.
And then being assigned to the same shift together. It was, you know, it was fate.
That's cool.
It was a blast.
Perfect.
Yeah, Rick's a good guy.
Yeah, it helps you. You know your Proby partner going in.
Yeah, big time.
Not many people get that.
Yeah, we'd known each other for years.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a rarity, I think.
Yeah,
other than a couple here and there, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. So because we're gonna get into peer support. You know, I think we'll eventually take a little break before we get to there. But a couple more, you know, questions. I know you wanted to kind of talk about the kitchen table a little bit and the stuff that happens. You know, we kind of talked about that on one of our episodes before anyways, but I know you kind of had it to some things to add to that.
Was that your, I asked you, but I forget, was that your second, was that your first episode or
second episode?
That you were talking about the importance of
brushed over it.
And the kitchen table being such a vital part of that station and that crew. And, you know, whenever I go to talk to somebody about, you know, peer support or mental health issues or whatever, I always tell them, I'm like, the best therapist that you have is that kitchen table. you know, and I always encourage crews, if they don't already, most of them do, but I encourage crews, if they don't already, to, you know, after a stressful call, come back, sit down at the table, you know, grab a water or a Monster or whatever, and say what's on your mind, you know. Yeah, one of the most therapeutic things that we have is just sitting down at that table and
while we're talking about this, I'm sorry, I would like to get this out there. So
please do.
I've been on one today. Ben can attest to this earlier in the gym, but that kitchen table, it seems like we get less and less time to actually sit around that thing and like be together. So when you're there, be there, be present, put the phone away. That's the thing I see all the time now. Like, I might be guilty of it every now and then. Chances are I'm looking up something fire related though, because I'm a nerd, but. Or music, or you know.
Yes.
Not really mindlessly scrolling, but put the phone away and be present. And actually, like, if you're gonna eat a meal together, eat the meal together and talk. Yeah. Don't be like on your phone taking a bite in between scrolling. Like, nobody needs more doom scrolling than we get nowadays.
Yeah.
Like, there's enough doom and gloom in our own personal lives. We don't need to go looking for it. Like,
don't need external.
It's shoved in our faces. But what I'm saying, like, to add what you were talking about, like, if you're at the kitchen table, be present at the kitchen table. That's how people get to know each other. That's how people get to know you. So you can't say, well, no one gets me or no one understands. Well, then be present and show them who you are.
That's on you. You know, if
I know that's like that's a generational thing. And I'm sounding like a boomer right now.
No, I do that too.
I think it's it's easy enough to do that for sure. It's the same thing at home. You know, when you're at home and stuff with the kids or whatever. You know, and like you said, it is kind of because we didn't have the cell phones as much, and all that stuff. But and you were more present. But it's the society we live in, and we're all like plugged into everything and stuff. And but just if nothing else, at least at dinner time. Or we're going to have these conversations, just sit and just put the electronics away just for, even at 10 minutes makes a huge difference.
Oh my God.
Like, and if you're struggling, there's 100% chance people at the table have been through a similar situation. It might not be exactly the same, but they know where you're coming from. Because whether we want to say it or not, we've all felt the same things at a certain point in our life. It all is different.
No matter the scenario.
No, exactly.
Absolutely.
Paul, you brought up a good point. You were talking about how the best therapist can be going there. I think a good point to remember is then when people are talking that they might be venting, and whether maybe it's something about work, then they're talking about like another maybe the first shift did something wrong, or they don't like the way an assistant chief went about something. To be like, hey, that person's probably more likely just venting, and to not get too worked up about it or make a big stink or be like, oh, that guy was saying stuff about so and so, just to be like, that guy's getting some stuff off his chest, and then 24 hours from now he's gonna forget all about it, no longer care, and that's not an issue. To not make if you hear some stuff, you're like, let's not make a mountain out of this.
Exactly. Yes.
Take care of some of those negative vibes. We can kind of
there's a big difference between
that can
actually complaining about something or someone and venting.
Yeah.
And I can attest to doing that because I do that, and when it comes out, it sounds crazy. For lack of better terms. But I'm just getting out what I'm feeling in the moment, and then I go right back to, I'm good now.
Yeah, all right, I'm good, thanks.
I just needed to get that
outlet,
And that's the...
Don't talk to my wife, by the way. Sometimes
venting is huge, and it's a vital part of our healing, just like you said, getting that stuff off your chest, no matter how inconsequential, third shift didn't get fuel for the third shift in a row, and the important thing is to be able to listen to that and recognize, what's just venting. And honestly, sometimes if you let them vent long enough, it will lead to the source of the venting. Maybe third shift hasn't gotten fuel, for 3 shifts in a row, and that means, and I'm oversimplifying here, but that means that they don't care about this, and that's and kind of like my wife doesn't care about when and one thing will lead to another, and pretty soon they're talking about something going on at home or outside of the job,
It sounds like we're segueing into where we want to go.
I want to talk about cell phones real quick because
I just threw mine up here because I had it in my pocket, but I'm like, I just want to get it away from you.
I'm as bad as anybody.
That's where I try it with the screen down sometimes. have a post like that, because then it's not.
I don't want to. If Baker tells
until
me
your watch buzzes,
I don't want to read that. It's another negative thing
implied.
in my life. I'm done.
Yeah. But you know, and again, I'm not preaching because I'm as bad as the next guy about being on that stupid thing. But very long, convoluted story. But I took my youngest to see Harry Styles. To a Harry Styles.
Took your youngest to see Harry Styles. Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
But before we went, when we were at the concert, before it started, I told her, I said, I want you to enjoy this. Let me take care of pictures, videos, any of that stuff. I want you to like just put your phone down, not worry about, you know, Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. Put your phone down and just enjoy the moment. And she agreed wholeheartedly. Of course, she still was on it, but I think not nearly as much as she would have been. You know, and that's, you know, I don't know. We're getting back to music, but that's, you know, you go to any concert now, and every single person is holding up a cell phone. And I love going back and watching concert footage from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and every single person there is just there in the moment. You know, there were no cell phones, obviously, but I kind of miss that. You know, and it's important to make sure that you don't get caught up in that and just learn to live in the moment.
Yeah, I saw LeBron James hit like his 4 millionth point or something the other week, and they showed the shot where he's in the air, he's making, you know, the shot, and everybody but like one guy had a phone out, was taking a photo. It's where it's going. But so
the last concert I went to that actually didn't allow phones was Tool.
Oh, nice. Wow. Yeah.
There was a person just kitty corner from where we were that whipped their phone out. Security immediately took them out.
Wow, really?
But that's how strict like Maynard is about his shows. But he finally said, "You've been good little girls and boys. You can take your phone out for this song." And so we all
then everybody at that point,
because you're like, dude, it's like a bad thing. We can't do it, and then they let it happen.
Yeah, one song.
Yeah, but it was
cool.
amazing
like
though.
that.
It was like that's the way it's supposed to be in its purest form. So it's like, Anyway, I'm with you on that. Back in my day, we didn't have the phones. So face page.
One question I do have back to, you know, back to the job and stuff, and just because, you know, Paul, you've been, you know, around the block a little bit with SPI and then coming here and stuff is, and me being on, you know, for a while and stuff. But what do you think as far as like our biggest changes that we've done in like techniques or different skills that we use, you know, that you've seen like over your career?
Great
you know?
question. Yeah.
Because like I think the biggest thing for me, like that I could think of off the top of my head is our pit crew CPR.
Yes.
You know, where before it was always, and I'll tell you, like, because I would have been one that would have tested. I think when I had my first ever code, I was an EMT basic working on a basics BLS service in Evelyn, Minnesota, and it was me and Steve Sklors. Like, there's just two of us there, and we went to a hotel for a guy that had coded and stuff. And I mean, we're talking like this is my maybe second or third shift ever working on an ambulance just out of basic school. You know, so my eyes are like, I mean, this dude gets shocked. I mean, everything. So like, but I would have told you, you know, from then, you know, forward going that as far as saves and everything, that CPR was not a thing. Like you coded, you're done. I mean, pretty much like there is no coming back from that. And now, you know, with this pit crew CPR that we're doing, I've seen more ROSC on scene where somebody is DRT when we get there, you know, dead right there. I mean, and we literally, by the time you get to the hospital, they're talking to you and you're explaining to them everything that you did. It is incredible that what we're seeing. And to me, that's one of the biggest, I think, technique things or something that I've seen. You know?
Absolutely. Great point. Yeah. As kind of a side note, I had a crazy thing the other day. When I volunteered in South Sioux, I can remember coding a guy that worked at Everett's Furniture, a big furniture store over in South Sioux. And the reason I remember him is because in my 20 plus years of doing this, I can probably name on one hand people that I have not just gotten back, but people that we've gotten back that have gone on to lead a productive life.
Like no deficit,
discharge from the hospital and resume a normal life. I think I would struggle to name 5. But so we got called to an apartment complex last week. I don't remember the nature of the call. It's not important. But we were asking this guy his previous history, and he was in his late 80s. And he said, well, I died once. And, so we're all
like,
kind of like,
yeah.
oh,
Nice.
Really? Do tell.
Yeah.
Sure you did. So he starts, so we're like, what do you mean you died? And he said, well, I was at work at Everett's Furniture, and down I went. I don't remember a thing, and the guys there got me back, and so it was the same guy.
Wow,
that's so cool.
Which just blew my mind. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. And he was at a like an assisted living facility here in Sioux City. It was the same exact guy. I'm like, oh my God,
what are the chances?
That was me.
I know you.
Yeah, it wasn't
like,
did it flood back like immediately, or did you?
As soon as he said, something clicked when he said Everett's Furniture, and that he had arrested in Everett's Furniture. I'm like, it's got to be the same guy. Mm-hmm. So I was just blown away, and I was like, I was on that call. That I was part of that, and it was lost on him, because because he's old, and
it's not like the movies, kids.
Yeah,
it's not like the movies.
I think for just that nanosecond, I expected to have like this
heart to heart,
this reunion of like, you saved my life, and he was. He's like, anyway, I've got some heart problems. He went on with his story. I'm like,
but still, that is like just
crazy.
That's incredible. Like, again, just to say like he was DRT here. How many years later, still kicking, and you're like, there you are. That is insane. So I mean, it's not like TV that they remember, but it is kind of like TV that we literally do save people and bring people back.
Oh, yeah.
Reach into the right into the the depths and just pull somebody right back and take
from
them
hell,
right from
because most people are going to hell. Is that what you meant by deaths? I don't know.
No, I was just like like death's not taking them today. We're bringing them back. That's the way it's doing it.
Sorry,
that's a good transition.
You asked
the changes,
the biggest changes, and probably associated with that. The first thing that pops in my head is probably technology. Mm-hmm. Technology as it pertains to EMS. When I started, we had the LifePak 10s, which were just these ginormous boat anchors that when I started, we didn't even have like patches. We still did the paddle thing, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But it's hard to get a good shock with the paddles thing. But so we had a LifePak 10 that had paddles and and a 3-lead, and that was it. Wow. And to try and treat and diagnose a heart attack or anything cardiac related with those, it was just it was so so archaic. And now, fast forward to now, and we have the LifePak 15s, and we're doing 12 leads. We're transmitting 12 leads to hospitals, giving them advance notice. So as soon as we hit the door, they're going straight to cath lab. Mm-hmm.
The end title thing.
Yeah, the capnography and stuff.
Capnography, so probably just the medical advances in technology that have resulted in so much better patient care. Mm-hmm. The ability to just see so much more of what's going on. That's the first thing.
Yeah, to talk about I think throwing a 3-lead on a patient to now we can pinpoint where they're having a heart attack. Yeah. Basically, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Do you
with a physician? Backing that up, but like. Yep. That's crazy.
I think the sepsis alerts, the stroke alerts, the STEMI alerts, all those things that we call so much more that we're finding and can see, and we have protocols. We have all this, that adds into all that too. Yeah.
And honestly, from a compassion, a moral compassion standpoint, our ability now to call patients on scene. That's huge. There's anyone that has ever coded someone It's awful. It's just barbaric. And, you know, in the past, you take these 95-year-old people that you know have absolutely zero chance of ever coming back.
Unknown downtime.
Yes.
Yep. 95. Laundry list of health
CPR
problems.
and the drugs, and you intubate them, and it's just awful. And you know, for families to have to see that and put their loved one through that, if you will.
Right.
And you know, please don't get me wrong. Every situation's different.
Every life deserves saving too.
Absolutely, yes. And that's obviously not to say that we don't try anymore, but
100%.
our ability to do a code on scene, everything that they would be doing at the hospital, and to not get anything out of that and to be able to call them on scene, I think is so much better for families and for us too, to just be able to just stop and let them go in peace.
Well, I think it puts more importance and value on our education and skills.
Absolutely.
It's like saying, well, you guys are there. You're my eyes, basically, is what the doctors are saying. You are my eyes, and I trust what you're saying and seeing and hearing and on scene. Yep, we're comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's amazing
that's
to come from where it was, you know.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's
like, no, you bring them in, and
that's some trust, man, and that puts value on our people. I think.
Absolutely, and it does. You're right. It shows that our medical director and everyone involved believes in us and our ability to paint a clearer picture of what we're doing.
What'd you have?
Oh, I was going to ask you, do you clipboard or do you iPad with the ESO?
That's a good question.
I still
like
clipboard. That's a great question.
I slowly see more and more using ESO. You put your vitals in right there, and then it's already in the board.
I know it.
I feel bad about clipboarding because, like, I was, you know, how many years ago I would have pushed for electronic PCRs and apps to do all this stuff on, and wanted that, and now we have it, and I don't.
And you don't use it.
I still clipboard.
We don't even have it on Squad 3.
Really?
So,
I didn't know.
No clipboard. It's all iPad. Huh?
No iPad.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get an option. You do all clipboard.
Gotcha.
I will say when I do decide to take it out, like when if we run a call at 49,
not complaining.
I will iPad there, and it's pretty handy.
It
you know,
is.
you know, if you get used to it, practice, I think you'd get pretty good. Sometimes I just think the pen is quicker to just jot
it
something
is
down.
for me.
You know,
just scribble something down.
We like it. Helps our EMS crews because
I feel way less bad about throwing that
timestamp
than the iPad.
Yes.
But I would gladly throw the iPad too most days. But clipboard I can just kind of toss over and do whatever.
Why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back and then we'll finish with you said before you want to talk about your career but also peer support and tie it into one big kind of story.
Okay.
So we'll break and then we'll come back and finish with that.
Perfect.
Awesome. For that stuck around for that first hour and 20 minutes, we did not. We're going to start with the peer support stuff now. So that was the meat and potatoes of our episode here, and we got off some side tracks, which is good. Those were fun conversations.
If you're still here for it, congratulations.
But for those of you who don't know, Paul Hendricksen, he is the head of the peer support team on Sioux City Fire Rescue. And peer support we talked about changes earlier. That's probably another recent change that's really taken over by storm. I'm not an expert in it. I know you are, so we're going to let you talk. But the effects on mental health and the work environment that we're in, the stats scream off the charts compared to, I'd say, a normal job if that exists. So talk about peer support. What is the peer support team? How did it start, and why do you do it?
Yeah, great point, and that ties in with that question earlier about changes that I've seen in my career, and you've probably even seen this. You've been on
about 5 years.
You've probably seen an increase in this just in your short time, I'm guessing.
Yes.
But you know, like when Phil and I started, and maybe even Devin, but you know, I know Phil and I for sure that when we started, there was nothing. There was no. When I got into it, the only thing that you were told about mental health or difficulties with calls or anything was that you don't talk about it.
Right.
It's just something that you don't talk about because it tied in with the stigma of it and the hero aspect, if you will, that if you admit that you're having troubles with something, then that means you're weak. and you're probably not capable of doing the
you're
job.
You're not fit for this line of work.
Not fit for this line of work. Exactly. I and I can talk about it later, but yeah, I had a few experiences like that early on in my career that that really made me question. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not cut out for this, and that's too bad. But anyway, I digress. But so yeah, mental health as it pertains to first responders is a relatively new concept in the landscape of fire service. And I try to include everybody, so I try to say first responders, because it affects everybody: fire, ambulance, police, dispatch, all of the people involved in the system. But so if I say firefighters, I'm still talking about everybody, but in the past it was just ignored, and just recently it's mental health and its effects on first responders is slowly coming into the conversation. And now that they're starting, still not 100% reliable statistics, but now that they're starting to at least track some of this stuff, you're right. We're off the charts. Our first responders have a 20% chance of being diagnosed with PTSD, as opposed to 6-8% general population.
Public,
yeah. Military is around 11. And again, these percentages are kind of ballparks because I don't have 100% accurate data. But, so 20% PTSD, suicides, the last 2 years, suicides have exceeded line of duty deaths in firefighters. And, there's always so much talk about line of duty deaths. And yes, while those are terrible, we're not talking about the suicides that could also be considered a line of duty death, so increased suicide, substance abuse, marital issues, the list goes on and on and on. And this job absolutely will affect you. It's not a matter of if, but when, my wife will be the first one to tell you that that I'm not the same person that I was when she met me. And if she were meeting me today, she probably wouldn't have anything to do with me, And I wish I could blame all of it on the fire service, but there are other things that factor in. But the fire service is absolutely one of them. The normal person isn't equipped to deal with some of the traumatic stuff that we see, So we've got to talk about it, and we've got to find ways to treat the people that we have now, and also make the new people coming in, let them be aware that, hey, this is going to happen to you. And one of the ways that we do that is through the peer support team. Peer support in general has been around for a while, but the I.A.F.F. is the one that came up with peer support for firefighters back in 2015, I believe it was. The original team leader was Captain Wynn out at Station 4. He's the one that spearheaded, and I give every ounce of credit to him for getting this peer support thing up and running. He's the one that I talked to him about it the other day. Apparently it was at a health and safety meeting that he was talking to our old training officer, Captain Bennett. And the way DJ explained it, he said something had come across Captain Bennett's desk about the I.A.F.F. and offering a peer support team. And at the time, we had a CISM team, Critical Incident Stress Management, and we'll talk about the difference between the two in a little bit here. But at the time, we had a CSM team in place, but no peer support, obviously. So he handed that off to DJ and said, hey, why don't you look into this and see what you can figure out. So so DJ took it and hit the ground running, and assembled a team. He and Lieutenant McClure, I believe, were the first two to take the peer support class, and then I was the class afterwards. I took it with Nick Roth. So I've been in peer support since 2016, and then in 2020 is when I became team leader. So
gotcha. And obviously have, from my perspective, looks like you have an extra passion for it. It's not just something you just, that sounds like something you do. You really do care about that movement, but that whole topic as a whole, and it's something you're drawn to. Where does that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, other than the fact that I'm kind of an empath by nature. I don't, which it's funny because people that know me but don't really know me would probably be like, you are not, you're an asshole, But I am. I'm one of those people that just hates to see other people suffer, if you will. This job has absolutely affected me, from a mental health standpoint. I've struggled for years with anger issues. A lot of this stuff at the time I didn't realize that I had until I finally broke down and started seeing a therapist, and then was diagnosed with anxiety and depression and PTSD, and which was a hard diagnosis for me to swallow. So she was telling me this, and I said, did you say PTSD? Because in my mind, and most people's minds, when you think of PTSD, you think of
the last 20
military.
years,
military stuff like the military,
Iraq, Afghanistan,
and these guys that are in the military that are in these horrible firefights and
see their buddy get killed,
see the most horrific things, and I really struggled with being lumped into that same category. I didn't feel that my issues were worthy of that designation. You know what I mean? Like, save that diagnosis for somebody that's really messed up, because I'm not that bad. Well, I am, just in different ways. So that took some getting used to. And what helped me with that was just learning more about what PTSD. You get this thought in your mind that anyone that has that diagnosis is somebody that's curled up in a corner somewhere and isn't able to function, and loud noises set them off, and so on, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's a multifaceted disease that, to be diagnosed with it, has a huge list of criteria, if you will. If you experience 2 of these symptoms for more than 6 months, or 1 of these symptoms for more than 2 months, or it's a very lengthy process to have the official diagnosis, if you will. But so that's helped, just understanding more about it, and that it's not always going to be, you can have it and still function, and it's something that you can work on and something that you can recover from. But it took me a long time to get to that realization.
I'm glad you explained that, because I don't feel like many people know that. If you got diagnosed with, let's say, your ACL tore, whether it's a complete tear, it's really bad, you're going to need a month or a year of rehab, versus you sprained it. But PTSD, they don't rate it it's a grade 17 tear. It's just you have PTSD, and PTSD covers, like you said, the veterans that spent the last 20-some years of the war on terror that you get lumped into, or me. And it's like, what's the difference? Well, there is a difference. We don't rate it. We don't rank it. It's just kind of one big swimming pool.
Yeah.
Is there a number, because like you said, until you went in, you wouldn't have known, is there like a statistic out there, a number that says like how many in the first responder community stuff would be like our undiagnosed PTSD, have PTSD,
I think it's
don't
so
even know
new.
it. I mean, is it, are we, I know what, like you said, like 20% more likely to have that.
Right.
But I mean, I guess if we're not even tracking, if you could be like 50% of the department probably has PTSD, doesn't even know it. I mean, there's nothing.
I would hate to speculate, because suffice it to say that there are, I'm guessing there are probably more people that could be diagnosed with PTSD that are undiagnosed, as opposed to ones that have actually been diagnosed with it. Because and it comes back to that mental health, the whole stigma around mental health, and it's getting better, but it's still out there, That's a great analogy. People, and it's a similar one that I use. When people have a physical ailment, you can show them. I have hypertension. Oh yeah, prove it. Okay, take my blood pressure. I have generalized anxiety disorder. Oh yeah, prove it. Well, I can't. I think people like to be able to see for themselves that you have some type of injury. Yes. And we're taught, society teaches us that any type of mental issue that you have is something that you should be able to control. And we still do it, and I do it myself. Settle down. Don't freak out. Why are you angry? All of these questions, all of these things that we say to people, that we're doing them a disservice by not recognizing what's really going on. But so yes, there's a stigma with mental health that guys are just not. There's one study I read that estimated 92% of first responders don't come forward with mental health issues because they're afraid of the stigma attached to it, whether that's afraid of losing their job or being demoted or labeled, whatever the reason is. It's a huge percentage of people that are still trying to overcome that, and it's too bad, because it's a medical issue like anything else that we have, but it's getting better, but a long ways to go.
I know we want to let you continue with it.
No,
but
you're fine.
I know a lot of people it's a self-stigma too.
Right.
To where you're inside your own head already.
Yep.
And now you have these new pieces of information coming at you about, I just got diagnosed with this. But you have a built-up stigma about that on your own without outside influence already, because you have all your own self that you have to deal with already.
Yeah, and no worse critic than ourselves.
Now you're like, great. Okay, maybe I'm not fit to do this job like you were talking about.
Yep.
And sometimes that just stems from yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely how it used to be. We're miles ahead of where it was even when I started. So
it's leaps and bounds.
There's a lot of that outside stigma, I think, has gone away.
Yep.
And I hope that's the way other people feel. But
it's not so much to put you out to pasture and be like, okay, now you just live with this. It's how to function with it and still do the job and keep doing the job.
Absolutely.
And, we got guys that have their shoulder surgery and they have to stretch more, or maybe do yoga or whatever it is to keep that shoulder in working condition. Well, it's the same thing with your brain.
Yeah.
You just got to rehab it and therapy it and keep it in good shape so you can do this job for 25, 30 years, whatever it is, and then retire
more
and
years.
have that.
And you're absolutely right. But it's hard to do. It's hard to make that leap. And one of the hardest things that I had to do, and many other people feel the same way, is realizing that you need help, that you need to ask for outside help, that whatever coping mechanisms you have, whatever methodology you have for dealing with your stress is not working. And it's actually getting worse, and if I don't take care of this soon, then I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard, and I love it when guys, for lack of a better term, love it. It makes me feel good when guys come up to me and say, hey, can I get a number for a therapist? Like, good job, because that is so hard. Yeah. It's so hard because, again, we think it's something that we should be able to figure out ourselves, and we're beating ourselves up. And to recognize that and to recognize the need for outside help is huge. Yeah, it's awesome.
I think while we're talking about it, just like the step you have to take to try and find a therapist yourself, but to ask you, that's huge.
Yeah.
To even approach someone else to be like, hey, I need to get some help, and do you have a number for a therapist? Like,
yeah. And when I took over the peer support team, I knew that if I was going to have any credibility, and if I was going to stand in front of you guys and talk about mental health and taking care of yourselves, then I had to be open with you guys about how it's affected me. because my hope is always, I understand it's not for everybody, and I know that I'm not going to impact every single person that I talk to. Honestly, I'm shooting for one person. Every time I talk to, whether it's an EMS conference or in front of you guys or whatever, anytime I talk about this, I'm shooting for one person to listen to what I'm saying and to be able to relate somehow and think to themselves, if it can happen to him, it can happen to me, and if he can get help, then maybe I can get help too.
And you probably don't get to see your victories either, because if our peer support team is doing its job, then that means it's working, and guys things aren't getting bad enough for guys to need to get there, because we're doing what's needed to keep everyone in a good headspace, and then you don't see that.
Right. Yeah.
You sometimes things have to be a problem and then get better to be like, okay, this was a victory, but this is a very real conversation, but this could be something. I'm sure nationwide this has prevented suicides. This has been the reason that people are still doing the job and didn't have to leave the job or didn't have to leave us here on Earth.
You sure hope that's the case. Yeah. We just had that discussion.
You don't get to see that.
Right. Yeah. We had that very discussion at our last peer support meeting. We thankfully lately have been in a pretty slow period where we haven't had a lot of talks with people. So I have one of two thoughts on that. The first one is, does that mean that we're kind of forgetting about it? Maybe we need to have another class on it to remind people that they have these resources for them. Or, kind of like you said, maybe we've done a good job of educating everyone that they're dealing with it themselves or as a crew before they get to the point where they need us. And I hope it's the latter.
And we have tons of members now. How many people are on the peer support team?
16.
16. Wow. And what kind of training do they go through before they are a peer support team member?
So it's so you can join the team without the official I.A.F.F. training. The training is a 2-day class that Devin's had it, and it's to say it's intense is an understatement. It's pretty raw and pretty emotional. You talk about some pretty tough stuff, but you have to have to talk about it. It's a pretty intense 2-day course, and then we try to keep some type of continuing education. The I.A.F.F. is always coming out with webinars and stuff about different topics that you can pick up. So there's always stuff to learn.
Yeah. But, why is the variety of people so important, and the number of people on this team?
Yeah, because not everyone is comfortable talking to maybe this person. We do have a good variety. We have one retired member that is absolutely fantastic. He was a member of the fire department, retired. And when he was on the department, we didn't have any of this. And when he retired, he was overwhelmed with all of this emotional baggage, if you will, and really didn't have any effective means of dealing with it. He caught wind of what we're doing with the peer support team, and he thought, I want to be a part of that. And he's been great. So he kind of helps deal with the one of the things that we touch on with the peer support team. Devin's part of it too, is the retirees, both past and upcoming. We like to talk to guys that are getting ready to retire, just to give them a heads up. Hey, once you leave this fire department, you could be faced with all of these demons, and here's what you do if that should happen. But anyway, so we've got a retiree. We've got 2 people that are on the EMS team, and then the rest of them are firefighters. We've got lieutenants and captains and privates, and a really good variety because, again, someone that I'm comfortable talking to, someone else might not feel comfortable talking to them, so we like to have a good variety, good mix. Yeah.
If you were to ever ask me, like, have I used peer support team, I'd tell you no, because I've never called after like a tough call.
Sure.
And been like, but a lot of my good friends at work are peer support team members, and I've spent several hours, whether it's at the gym or running or whatever, with an off-shift buddy, and you start venting about work or a tough call or something didn't go your way. So I would tell you, no, I haven't, but I have been. I've been using this peer support
that's
team.
where the prevention
I use it all the time.
Comes in, where maybe why we're not seeing the numbers we're seeing is because people are just open about stuff now.
Right.
Where normally I might not talk to you about work because I'm away from work. I don't want to talk about work.
Right.
I get that. I totally get that. And that's how some people operate. Totally fine with that. But like you said, I think people are more comfortable venting to a close friend, especially that knows where you're coming from. Like say you and I this morning while we're working out, maybe we get into some vented, heated, kind of getting out some conversations we have about work. To me, that counts as a peer support contact.
Yes.
But it's just part of our normal conversation just because of our relationship now. But yeah, I'd count that as a peer support contact probably because you're voicing something that's been weighing you down.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this, but like peer support, I think like on the outside, the label is we ran a tough call, and that call now bothers me. So now I'm talking about it so it doesn't bother me. But it's so much more than that. And not just that. But go ahead.
That's just one component of it, and that's something that that DJ did a good job of. It was getting a specific set of parameters to when a peer support team will be activated. But again, it can be asked for by anyone at any time. You know, our APs read. You know, I think it's a pediatric injury or death, firefighter injury, death. You know, we have a list of things.
Like examples listed, but that's not to say that
it's
you go into a house and see kids crawling around in human crap or something. Sorry to get real vivid for people out there, but this is what happens. That might bother you way more than the guy that we just had split in half down the road in the car wreck.
Right.
That doesn't bother me, but what might bother me might be that living conditions of people might bother someone to a point where, okay, that triggered me right there. Like I can't get past that. Thinking about those people living that way.
Absolutely.
By all means, there's another reason to call or get a hold of someone you can talk to, or us or whoever. And that'd be a contact for someone. It's we list, like you said, examples, but we're not bound to those.
No, absolutely.
And I know we hammer on the traumatic stuff, but that's because that's easy. That's tangible for us to all see, and kind of that's the go-to example. But it might be something as simple as, but not simple as, someone living in human filth. That could definitely get to somebody. You know?
We all have our own definition of trauma, and we could go around this table and we would probably each define it differently and give different examples of something that might be traumatic to me, but again, maybe not the rest of you guys. And you know, that's it's worth mentioning that that you know there are two different types. There's acute and there's cumulative. You know, military probably deals more with the acute type of trauma, the instantaneous, but they're finding that first responders fall more into the cumulative category, to where it's really hard to pin it down to one particular call that affects you. You know, you might have had this stroke patient 2 years ago, a kid crawling around on the floor last week. You know, all of this stuff piles up. And, you know, I like to use the analogy of the stress bucket. Have you heard me talk about that before? I love this. So our bodies are a stress bucket. If you can visualize that, you know, so the stress coming in is the water. And at the bottom of the bucket, we have this little spigot that when our stress or water gets too high, we open up that spigot, release some of that stress, and feel normal again. Well, not all of us have a fully functioning spigot. You know, some of us have broken ones, some of us have ones that, you know, don't turn on at all, and then some of us have more water coming in than we can open up and let out, and that's when we run into issues, is when that bucket starts to overflow. So that's when we start talking about building resiliency and ways to deal with that stress that you're accumulating, and effective ways of dealing with it before it starts to overflow.
I love the word resiliency, and it's super important as in the line of work that we're in. And like I said, you know, our EMTs, paramedics, police officers, dispatch, you're exposed to certain things that I'd say the average human will only see so much of their life, and then in a 30-year career, you're going to be that percentage is just, it's going to be outrageous.
Of stuff.
So you're exposed to these things more often, and then learning how to deal with this and then keep functioning. That's the definition of resiliency. Is dealing with that adversity and
some of us, you know, don't get me wrong. I always I always kind of hesitate talking about some of this stuff. I don't want to put ideas into people's heads that it's going to affect every single person that does this job. The majority of people have built-in abilities to deal with this, you know, in a, I hate to use the word normal, but in a normal sense, you know, it's, but even if you do, you still, you know, it's still good to deal with it effectively, you know, but, and especially for those that don't have those mechanisms or that overwhelm their capabilities of dealing with this, you know, and then, you know, again, work is just one aspect of this. We've got, you know, we've got our home life and we've got financial issues and all of these other things, you know.
That's what I always think that we do, and it's good that peer support stuff is, and those conversations do happen now. Because, like you said, when we started, you know, there was this. The county had the CISM. I can't even remember. I know like Kelly Hansen would carry a pager because he was part of that team, but I can't remember any guys. As far as us having, eventually, I think we did get a stress debriefing team, and then it's grown from there. You know, guys come on the job and new guys, and we do a really good job. You know, you got your EMT, you come in and we start teaching EMS, and we do a really good job on probation of teaching you how to be a firefighter, right? We teach you how to pull a pre-connect, how to catch a plug, how to stack a ladder, you know, how to do that stuff. What I think, at least when I started, you know, and that we didn't do was talk about, you know, not just the mental stress that it could happen to yourself, but the stress that causes on your family life and the stuff at home, you know, that you find out, you know, and if you come on as a single guy, like say, you're like, it's just me, I got nothing. But then, you know, you meet your wife, you have kids and stuff, and we don't do a good job, I don't think, of having those discussions of what kind of, what that's, because, you know, the water heater goes out, or the kids are always sick, or, you know, this, you know, all the things that all the things that happen that are bad at home happen when you're here, and you can't leave, you know, and the stress and the things that you know, that's I think we, you know, that's now, but I think it now becomes part of the conversation with everything to better prepare people to, like, at least put it in the forefront that, hey, this is what it's going to do to your family, because we've all, you know, those of us with families and stuff, we've been there. We've had to go through that stuff. And I think new people coming on, you know, that are so, you know, Ben getting recently engaged, you know, if you know, and shippers going through that now, you know, with kids at home and the wife at home, and you know, and what that does to you, you know, and that aspect of it and stuff. So I think it's good that that's for the new kids coming in, and I say kids, but you know, but for the new kids coming in, that this is the environment that has been created for them, to do. I tell my kids out at WIT, you know, in class and stuff, I said, you know, it's no different than wearing an SCBA, right? Yeah. It's that low dose chronic exposure. You know, when I started on the job, we didn't wear SCBAs for car fires. You just went, you know, I mean, you just didn't. You went, you put out the car fire, and eventually it's, oh, now we're wearing it for that. We wear it, you know, but on a structure fire, you went in, did the fire, and we took those masks off as soon as you could to do overhaul and do, you know, dumped it because it's heavy, it's cumbersome, whatever. So, like I tell those guys, I did damage to myself because that's how we did things, right? It's no different than, you know, our mental health now, you know, that who knows to say, you know, 20 years from now, what kind of damage I did in my lungs, or what kind of damage I did to, you know, my mental health aspect of it, but that now the kids coming in, we've created the environment where wearing the SCBA all through overhaul, everything like that has been acceptable. The second set of turnout gear, deconning yourself, all these things so we take care of the health aspect of it, but now what you're doing with peer support, what we have to take care of that mental health, these kids are in a better position to have a better, a longer career and stronger career than even what we started in 20 years ago.
I sure hope so, because I don't want them to turn out like me, you know, and I don't think they would want to turn out like me either. But we do. We talk to probies. We talk to all new hires, whether it's EMS or fire, and stress that very thing. That and you know, one of our goals on the team, and my personal goal is to just normalize it. You know, and I think you normalize it by talking about it and letting them know that it's available, and that, if something's bothering you, you tell somebody. You don't keep that to yourself. And also, if you see a coworker struggling with something, get involved. You know, just normalize asking them, you know, hey, are you doing okay? just make it part of the conversation as if you were asking about any other
you don't got to
aspect.
announce it over the PA system or be like, hey, we got to call in the team right now and extract them and take them to the mental health floor.
Yep.
I think that brings up a good point. We do training every year. We'll come down to Station 3 of the training center and we'll talk about peer support and kind of our annual training checkup with it, right? And there's been times where I feel like it's easy for people that maybe aren't struggling or they can't relate because they're like, I'm doing good, that they sit back and they kind of it's easy just to roll it off like, oh, this training again, or we're doing this. But how important is it for those people to understand that like 20 people in the room, 19 are good,
right?
But there might be that one that it's affecting and needs this. So don't be that person that's like, I don't need this, I'm better than this, and then take it away from that person that does need it.
Or be there for that person.
Yes.
Listen to the training so you can recognize something, or be there at least to listen to someone, or like I said, intervene, anything. Engage yourself enough to, and I'm biased obviously because I'm on the peer support team and I think everything we do is important, but be that person, be engaged for someone else, not yourself then. Right. How about that?
Yeah,
I like it any simpler.
Yes, and I like to think that I can speak for the whole peer support team when I say that we have zero tolerance for anybody that attempts to squash someone's efforts or belittle or dismiss or any of that type of stuff. And honestly, I don't think we've had any problems with it. This is something, when DJ started this, he went to the union and went to the chief, and from day one, the union and the chief both have been 100% behind what we're doing, and that and that trickles all the way down, assistant chiefs and the rest of us. Everybody has been 100% on board, and that has made our jobs exponentially easier. I've talked to people from other departments that are either trying to get a peer support team in place, or they have one in place and it's just not quite working for whatever reason, and they tell stories about button heads with staff, with chiefs and assistant chiefs, and I get it, but I don't get it, and it just makes me so thankful that we've never run into that issue.
You said the peer support's an actual I.A.F.F. program, but our team and the size of our team and what we've done here, how is that kind of unique here, or is that something like you could go? I mean, is this kind of is this becoming a standard thing, or is this?
It is. Okay. Yeah. Yep. It's really cool because we weren't the first, but we were, I bet you in the top 3 or 4 departments in the state of Iowa that had a fully functioning, implemented peer support team. And I'm super proud of that, and that's so cool to be on top of something like that instead of 5 years down the road saying, every other department in the U.S. has a peer support. Maybe we should look into that, But yes, it's becoming the norm. And departments throughout the country are developing these teams. One cool thing that we're kind of a related note, one cool thing that we're doing through the I.P.F.F. is like working on assembling an Iowa network of peer support teams. Oh, yeah. So God forbid if some department like a department in Fort Dodge has a traumatic event that involves their fire department members, they're not going to be able to handle something like that. So they can call, a peer support team from somewhere else in Iowa, and we would go out and talk to them, and all share resources together, and it's kind of a cool deal.
Coming from that, working in Fort Dodge, we did have some pretty traumatic things that happened when I worked there, and not having that, you can see how that affects people personally and outside. But what we have here now and what we're trying to build throughout the state is going to be so much better for future generations to come. And I think that's the goal of everything we do anyway throughout the whole fire service. So this is just one more thing that we're building for future generations that we didn't have before. And I think everyone kind of like, you said, once you brought it up, people are like, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. So we were just waiting for that catalyst to kind of bring it. And now you talk to all the old guys. It's great that you guys have that now.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Every one of them.
Yes.
It's not like, well, we didn't need that when I was around. No, they go, that is so awesome that you guys have that going now.
Yeah.
And now that, you know, our retired member that's helping with us now is that bridge for the retirees to reach out to. It's just
maybe so with some of those guys too that to not realize that you had an issue until you got away from this job and then realize that I took a lot of stuff with me and didn't even know it was there because I was in it when I was working.
It's just normal.
But now I'm away from it and you don't have those outlets. What about like outside of Sioux City, like the counties, all the rural squads and stuff? I mean, does the county still have like the CISM? Do they have any peer support, or are they able to reach out to Sioux City peer support if they have an incident?
Right.
So like
the
deal they just had down at Salix here, the interstate accident there and stuff. So
there is still a CISM team in place that is currently under new management, if you will, but still a fully functioning team that is there for some of those rural, the volunteer departments that don't have any other resources, so they can reach out. We do have people on the peer support team that are also part of the CISM team. So that is available to them. They're just going back, there are reasons that we got away from the CISM. And I'm not here to choose sides or to badmouth.
Yeah, I guess like explain the difference, anything. I guess, between the peer support and the CISM, or
Yeah, so a CISM, a critical incident stress management, is I like to describe it as a formal process. So you have a traumatic call. Let's say you have a 2-vehicle car accident with fatalities. Okay, so you've got multiple people responding, multiple people involved. So a couple of days after the incident, a CISM team is assembled and will go talk to all of the people that were involved in that accident. Sheriff, again, ambulance, fire, dispatch, anyone that had anything to do with that call is part of the CISM. So like I said, it's kind of formal. You get together in a room and usually you sit in a circle. Have you guys done one?
I've been through a couple.
One? Yeah. They're very. I've been on both sides of them, and they're very uncomfortable, I think, because you sit there in a room. And you go around, and it's facilitated by a couple of CISM members, and then there are mental health professionals there as well. But you go around the room, and you talk about who you are, what your role was, and how you were involved with the incident. And then, everybody goes around, and then you go around again. How did this affect you? And there's a format to it. And it's good because, and I'm glad we still have the team, because a lot of these volunteer departments don't have anything else. But it also, when you bring in everyone involved like that, you're bringing in people that potentially may have not been impacted by it, So now they're sitting in this room with people that are having issues, and they're thinking, oh man, what's going on here? And it it's done after the event, by 48 hours or so. And I was involved in one, and I'll tell you about it. It was without going into details, but and maybe you've heard me tell the story before, but they haven't. So I was freshly off of probation, just started floating at Station 3, and we got called to a structure fire, 1400 block of Nebraska. And on the way, comm center said that that the dad had gotten out of the house, but there were still 2 kids inside. And I can remember talking in the cab on the way there, gosh, what kind of dad would get out of the house without taking his kids out first, So we knew there were potentially 2 kids inside. We were the last engine on scene, so we were just kind of in standby. And the crew that was doing the primary search found 2 kids. I wasn't involved with firefighting operations, so I asked the assistant chief. We had an ambulance on scene. I asked him if, maybe I'd be better off going into the back of the ambulance and helping out there. And he said, go ahead. So they brought in the first girl, put her on the cot, and she was unresponsive. And I remember checking for a pulse, and I thought, gosh, what the heck is that? Something doesn't feel right. So I brushed her hair back, and she had a rope around her neck, and she was deceased. The second girl that they brought in was also deceased as well. Mm-hmm. So we immediately transitioned from, fire victims to crime scene. And what had happened was this dad was involved with some weird stuff, like some witchcraft, I think, and some mental issues, and he had ended up murdering these 2 girls, which, as you can imagine, was horribly traumatic for all of us. And again, you have to remember where we were at the time that this happened. We didn't have a lot of this stuff in place. We maybe had a CISM team, maybe we should look into it. And I can remember one of the assistant chiefs telling me, he's like, yeah, I guess you should probably go. Maybe we should have one. It was all just very, very loose. And again, no fault of theirs. We just weren't used to dealing with stuff like this. But so I went to the CISM and we did our thing, and it was horribly emotional. And I can remember 2 other fire department guys being there that had been on for quite a long time, and 2 guys that I respected very much and still respect very, very much. Fabulous guys. But when it came to their turn to talk, they essentially said in so many terms, we see stuff that's a lot worse than this, and if it really bothers you that much, then maybe you should do something else for a job.
Yeah.
And as a young floating firefighter that had been on, for just a couple of years, that impacted me. I thought, well, crap, and I think I alluded to it earlier. Mm-hmm. I can remember thinking, like, God, this really bothers me, so maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore. But
it's crazy how you said you respected the hell out of those guys.
Absolutely.
So it's crazy how when people like that you respect, when they speak, how much it penetrates. Because I have those people that I've worked with and I've had my mentors, and like they do and say things that that's scripture to me now in terms of like that's good wisdom to go by, and I'm gonna move my career by those strong words.
Yes.
So being young, just how much of a sponge you are and how formidable you are by these
impact.
Senior guys.
Yep.
And just how it can just change the way you outlook on those things.
Yeah, and I never once faulted them for what they said. I still don't, because that was just the mentality.
Where we were at. Well, the guys that have been on how many years, that coming up through, like, there was nothing.
Yeah.
That's what you did. You suck it up, buttercup, and go on what you got.
Move on to the next one. Yeah.
MoveOn.com, and we just kept it going.
I digress. But so anyway, so what the I.A.F.F. found was that guys were much more open, much more receptive, and much more willing to talk if you had this peer support team in place, which is based on the concept of talking to crews immediately after the call, when it's still fresh, it's still raw, and guys are more willing to talk about issues when you're at that mental state, and then to talk to someone that is your own peer, someone that's from the same department or has been involved in the same types of calls that you've been on, is huge. There's that comfort there, talking to someone, knowing that it may not have been the exact same call, but I know that you've seen some stuff too. So let's talk about this, and that's where peer support is successful, is talking to people that, I can remember the department brought in years and years ago a mental health therapist for some reason. I think you were on, but and she, it wasn't her fault, but she had no idea what we did, what we dealt with, the things that we saw, and she came in and gave her speech, if you will. And I honestly think it did more harm than good. You know, guys are like, you don't have any idea what we deal with. You know, it's not her fault. She's just used to talking to people that have a 9 to 5 and that deal with, you know, these specific things. And when you factor in, you know, not only our medical calls, but fire calls, our living conditions, the 24-hour shifts, there's all of this stuff that has to be taken into account. And to be able to talk to a peer that knows exactly where you're coming from in that aspect is huge.
Well, it's that credibility, like you kind of said, where, you know, with you taking over the team, like if you know, when you share your stories, I know that the training was that last year that you did your big, I mean, I thought it was, just really fantastic how you know, and you have a way of talking and really, you know, when you speak, it's genuine, and you can tell it's genuine. So, you know, but I mean, but that lends to the credibility. So yeah, when we do have an outside person come in that doesn't know anything about what we do, or is it, and they give us a spiel about this stuff, firefighter, you know, sometimes we're fickle people that you come, you know, especially the outsiders that you're like, you could, because you don't know, you don't have, but to have somebody that works, even somebody that's another firefighter that's not from our department. It lends a little bit more credibility, but not the same as somebody that's here and then sharing, because the calls that you went on, that you're sharing stuff about, the guys are like, yeah, I was there, or I remember that call, or I remember these guys talking about, you know, but I mean, it lends to that credibility so much more that it means something now. And I think it becomes something where it is easier for guys to talk to people on the team because of that, you know. I know even, you know, Ships reached out. I think you guys do a really good job that peer support team does, as far as whether we call and say, hey, you know, we need to talk to somebody, or you guys just reach out, just check and be like, hey, heard you guys had a really bad call, just calling just to make sure everything, you know, touching base, you just need anything, how you doing, you know, just even that, just that little bit, just to know that somebody is paying attention.
Yes, exactly. Validation.
Sometimes that's, you know, that's all it takes, you know.
You're absolutely right. Just a quick little text to somebody can do wonders. Again, just letting them know that somebody's aware of what you went through, you know, and chances are you're going to be fine, but if you're not, let somebody know.
And it's also okay to not feel anything about it. Like I've had times where it's like, man, should I be dwelling on that a little more?
That really is a good point. So I can relate to that.
A lot of people probably can, and it depends probably what stage of life you're in too, because that changes. Everything might change tomorrow.
We are so different, dynamic, and it takes just a level of maturity to just really understand how different and dynamic we are. I want to thank you for sharing that, because that's a very personal story. Thank you for that. I think it's a great example of, you know, like a very traumatic call. It's a pretty bad one. Can we talk about compassion fatigue and burnout? Because I feel like that's completely different from an example what you just gave, but I feel like that's a monster that comes for what I see that come for a lot of people at work right now.
And with the volume of calls that keep going up, and you know, on to everyone's house station, you know, I think it's going to be a more common occurrence than it is now. Even
it's problematic nationwide. Whatever we're experiencing here in Sioux City is happening everywhere else. And it's just that. It's that, you know, we're all aware of it. It's that increased call volume that just keeps going up and up and up and up and up, with, if we're lucky, the same amount of you know, personnel to respond to these calls. And in some cases, not necessarily here, but in some cases, even less, you know, due to budget cuts and staffing cuts and whatever. And we're not going to get into that aspect of it, but it's just this continuation of things. Of things getting worse, and where does it end? And compassion fatigue is something that I struggle with, and I think it's something that every single one of us struggles with at some point in their career, at least once. You know, simply put, compassion fatigue is you get tired of taking care of people. You get tired of taking care of people that don't take care of themselves. And every district has them. You know, they have every district has their frequent flyers. Every district has their type of call where you know it's not a medical emergency, but for whatever reason this person's calling 911 and wants us to come and take care of them. And here's how I describe it. I have X amount of compassion that I can give out on any given shift. Okay. And if I'm not careful about how I distribute that compassion, pretty soon I'm out, and it's only 6 o'clock at night, you know. So I am sick of everyone, you know, and I don't like getting to that point. I'm ashamed to admit, and maybe you guys will too, but I'm ashamed to admit that I've been to that point more than once where I don't care about anybody. I don't care what's wrong with you because I'm sick of responding to these stupid calls, you know. So we have to be very careful about doling out our compassion and make sure that you know, you still have some left for that person that you may feel doesn't deserve any. You know, they still deserve compassion. I don't care who they are.
Yes. Passion, or at least some empathy.
Everybody does.
You know,
there's a great saying: find someone who deserves your least amount of compassion and give it to them. And I try to. That's kind of my mantra. It doesn't always work, but I try to remind myself of that. So what we as a peer support team do is stress to guys. We try to look at why that person is calling 911. What's the reasoning for calling?
Yes.
And without getting into any of the socioeconomic aspects of it, of you know, healthcare and not having a primary physician and so on, not having the resources that we have, you know, take a long, hard look at why that person is calling. Maybe there's underlying mental health issues. Maybe they're just flat out lonely and they like the attention, you know. Maybe, you know, understand that they're not calling you, as much as it seems like it, they're not calling you to be a pain in your rear. You know, they're not calling you to make you mad. There's a reason that they're calling for help, and just try to understand that there's more to it than meets the eye.
You might be the only positive thing in their life that day.
Yeah, maybe you're the only person that they've talked to in the last week.
Only real friendly face that they've seen.
They're still a person. You know, 100%. It doesn't matter. You know, because and if you went, and you know, to put yourself in a mindset too, like if that was even my relative, whether it's my mom or my grandma or my brother or sister, whoever, you know, how would I want them treated?
Right.
You know, so I mean, because that is somebody's, you know, that's somebody's, you know, mom or dad or whoever that we're still going to. So you know what, you might be burnt out. This might be the 10th call this month you went on this person, but at the end of the day, it's still a human being. You know, and you're supposed to treat others like you want to be treated, right? So I mean, it's like you know, you're still gonna have something you need to try to have something for somebody.
And it's hard.
I mean, it is. Like, as we say this, I feel like we're hitting the nail on the head on all that stuff. That's completely right. But it's also important to know that it is normal to run out of compassion from time to time in this line of work. If you do it, that does not make you a bad person. That does not make you uncut for the job you're not.
Right. Very good point.
And then this is just, how do you deal with it? How do you...
Because you say that now, and then it's like, okay, now run 15 calls after you're working. This is like you picked up an overtime shift, so you had 15 calls a shift before you didn't sleep. Now you're on your second, you know, your second 24. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You still haven't been to bed. You still got you're stacked up on a few reports. You know, I think you see it more on the EMS side because the extra paperwork and just the volume that they go on for. But still, you know, and then okay, now say the same thing. Tell me like you're not going to treat somebody and you're going to be short with somebody. So, that's a thing.
Did you sign up for the overtime though? Did you do? Honestly,
I mean, know it. You're
things to think about. But
right, but it gets to the point where the mind is mush. It becomes, you're in zombie mode. You're beyond zombie. I say, you know, it gets to a point where we've all been there, where I think you get to that zombie mode where you're just like, you're going through the motions, but you're not really there, and it gets to a point where you're beyond zombie mode, and there is just nothing. Everything is shut down completely, and you're still. So yeah, it happens, but to understand that people understand the environment that you're working in, and it doesn't make you a bad person if all of a sudden you run out of compassion, because it happens because of the environment that we work in, and you get to at some point.
And hey, gang, that's what peer support's for.
Yes, exactly. And
or recognizing that someone's to that point and being like, hey, do you need to come off the rig for a little bit? Chief's got the new policy
out of the fatigue policy. That's another. If you want to talk about changes, that's a that's a fantastic.
Maybe getting the cart ahead of the horse.
Yeah, but still,
not at all. It all comes down to I have to be very careful not to come across as preachy, because any of these bad behaviors that I talk about, I'm guilty of.
Yeah,
I've been there. But so be aware of it. Know that it's a thing for starters. And learn to recognize it within yourself and within your crew. And you're right. If you see it in somebody else, or if it's starting to happen to you, this is not going to be an urgent call that you're on. If you need to step out in the hallway for a little bit and take a few deep breaths, do it before you say something that you might regret, because it'll happen.
Yeah, I think, something that just popped into my mind here is how important it is to come to work ready for work too, because there's been times where maybe you're like, oh, it's a Sunday tomorrow. Sunday should be an easy day. And then all of a sudden the day doesn't treat you that way. So if you set yourself up with false expectations, you're behind the 8 ball, you're already low on sleep, and then you go through all that, then you're like I said, you talk about how much compassion you have.
Yeah.
You're not coming in that day with much compassion.
Yeah. We were going to come in and eat breakfast, and then we're going to do this. Then you called.
I didn't get to eat 2 plates of biscuits and gravy today.
Get over it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But, just personally, my kids accuse me of having no empathy and having no compassion. And I can totally understand why, because I view whatever is going on differently than my wife does, or they do, or whatever, and it's hard to explain to someone that's not in the biz, if you will. And I don't want to use that as an excuse. This is not a license to act like a complete jerk. But there's a reason to it, and it's it's a daily struggle both at work and at home to not let.
You mean you get you're quiet too?
No, I just get you have no compassion.
So that's
I do. It's just
good topic.
Yeah, we're hitting the head with the compassion fatigue.
So compassion leads to burnout, and we all know what burnout is. That's when you've maxed out, and again, just hopefully you take steps to avoid getting to that point. Whether it's tough, but if it means taking a vacation day or some sick time, or if you need to get away, because if you just keep fighting it and saying tomorrow will be better, it'll be all right, and just keep at it, it's not going away. So,
and I love using if you don't do it for yourself, do it for the ones you love and your coworkers. And
well, and I'll as I get longer into my career, you felt when you had vacation days when you were younger and stuff, you couldn't wait to get back to work.
Yeah.
Right. You even off the job, you thought about work. You just, it was all about that. Later now, I mean, I feel like I'm really good at being on vacation. Like, that I've made it a point now where, I'd be on my off days, I was engaged with the department, on vacation days, engaged with the department just all the time. But to now try, and when I go on vacation, is to unplug from department stuff and to actually be on vacation and be present with your family and be present, like, away from work, and try to get away from that stuff. But not just that is the sleep aspect of it too, and I think the rest of it is how that plays into your the mental health is being able to just, if you're off if you got a stretch of vacation for 3-4 days or 3-4 shifts and get a couple weeks of regular sleep.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, just
you know what a nap does for you.
You come back.
Yeah, and you do that for a couple weeks straight.
Oh yeah.
Excited.
And we could do a whole podcast on sleep and how it affects mental health.
I don't know that I want to get into that topic too much, because you're right. But overwhelming evidence that sleep obviously plays a big factor. The greatest testament to that is is when you see guys that are retired. And they look better than they did.
Yeah,
than when they
instantly, like within a month, they're like 10 years younger easily.
And they will tell you straight up, I'm sleeping like a baby every night.
And every because you're like, man, you look at every single one will tell no stress and sleeping. Every single one will tell you the same thing.
Hair gets back to a darker color.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. Like the guys that I've seen like come off the job and how much better they look.
Absolutely.
A lot of them.
That's an important part of, and if you want to segue into this, we can, but that's an important part of what we now stress as a peer support team, and that is building our resiliency. So all right, so we as we've recognized first responders that we deal with traumatic events on a regular basis, and yes, we've recognized that they impact us in these ways. What are things that we can do to either lessen that pain or prevent us from getting there in the first place?
Because we're not going to change what we're called for, and we're not preventing, and the calls are still going to go up. While we're here, you're a numbers guy. That runs in like the early 2000, 2005.
Well, like 6,000, just as an example, because I literally do have numbers. In the last 5 years, we've increased 2,500 runs in total. So we're averaging about 500 runs per year increase in volume. So you're talking like 40 runs per month. So I mean that's that's, and we're on track. I mean that's pretty consistent. About 500 runs, 500 responses. At least on average per year, but 2,500 in the last 5 years of what we've increased in volume. That's a lot because when I came on, it's probably 2017 we were at 8,800 responses. So and we're up over.
Sounds like heaven, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're over 2022. Last year we were over 11,000, and still just trending up all the time. So 6,000, and I thought we were busy. Then.
So Devin, you brought up a good point. You mentioned you signed up for that overtime, and I just want to touch up. But I think it's
advocate.
It's an excellent point. But
you can set yourself up for failure.
I don't think it's a problem here as much, but because Paul, how I always hear stories about back in the day, like overtime was rare. And it was seller, like if you got a shift, I don't know how often, but it was super rare. And not like this last year. It seems like there was overtime shift as much. You could pick up 20 extra shifts.
I had over 20 shifts.
Yeah,
bro, easily. we had privates making captain and higher pay.
Just from overtime,
which is good for our members, but at what cost?
So I don't know.
Their families,
keep that in mind.
Like I said, I don't think it's starting to become a small problem here where you're seeing like the mandates go up. But I know in other departments, they're so short staffed, and then they need to fill those spots where they're getting mandated into having to work these. So even like when I need to go home, no, the option is not there to go home. You're getting told we need minimum staffing. You're going to work, and I guess I feel like we've seen maybe an uptick in mandates in the last year or so. It's not catastrophic, like sound the alarm, but I know there's departments that.
It can be.
So we have that, and you guys can attest to it being on for a good number of years now, and the amount of like work we're doing outside of emergency services is exponentially more than even when I started, and it just seems like our plates didn't get any bigger, but we're loading them up more and more, and it just. That all compacts and compounds. And
I know we've changed our mandate policy, and we're on like the floaters and fourth men still on like about all three shifts. I think one shift's getting a little up there, but on the ambulance they rotated through that thing 3-4 times. And it's not going away. So this mandate no one is signing up to do it. No one say I do not want to work tomorrow, and like no, and then you're saying, well, it's your turn to be forced. And so that's an alarming.
It is, and I
something alarming that stands out to me in terms of the capacity fatigue and the burnout. Being you don't have a choice, you have to go take care of that.
So how does that guy like? Okay, you're working. I mean, all that in your building. So what? I mean, I don't know to say like, well, you can prepare yourself to do that, but I mean, I guess the tools. When you're talking about resiliency, so to help build yourself to handle that, I guess
that's tough, and I'm thankful that we haven't gotten to that point of some departments, and I'm hoping we never do, because you're right. That's it's one thing to voluntarily sign up for it. It's another thing to be mandated and be told that you have to work. Man, that's that's a kick in the throat to have that happen. And to answer your question, I don't know. You just have to, approach that on a case-by-case basis, I guess. But, again, just, do what you can to prepare yourself for any and all outside stressors, I guess, So.
But I mean, I guess with that, with the building resilience, I mean, are there tools? I mean, what are things that we can...
So like I was saying, we've recognized all of these detrimental effects that this job has on us. So the big push with the I.A.F.F. now is the resiliency aspect of it, and that is, what are things that you can do to prepare yourself for these events and to ensure that you have a long and healthy career. And so they're offering classes on resiliency now, and I'll just go over a few of them, but everyone is going to have their own ways of dealing with their stress. And I tell people, find what works for you, because just like meditation, for example, may work great for this guy, but this guy can't stand it and gets absolutely zero benefit out of it. So find something that works for you. So with that is, in the fire service, we have pre-plans. For those that don't know, a pre-plan is going through a major hazard in your area and pre-planning what you're going to do if and when you have a fire there, in its most simple terms. So part of building your resiliency from a mental health standpoint is pre-planning mentally, what am I going to do, not if, but when I have that traumatic call. And play through different scenarios in your mind and figure out how you're going to deal with that in a positive, effective manner. Maybe I'm going to go home, take a nice hot shower, and then go to the gym. Maybe I'm going to, get together with a couple of friends and go see a movie, something. Anticipate it. So when it does happen, you can at least tell yourself, okay, I'm kind of prepared for this. I need to go home and do X, Y, and Z to keep it from getting too bad, if you will.
Yeah.
So, so that's important. Obviously, eating and sleeping, like we've talked about. Get sleep when you can. Try to maintain a healthy diet. Honestly, diet is huge. You can notice a difference when you eat good and when you eat crap all day long.
Yeah.
And along with that goes exercise. A myriad of studies out there that show the aspects and the benefits of taking care of your physical health also takes care of your mental health, and conversely, if you neglect your physical health, you neglect your mental health as well. It's all tied together. So, get out there and do some exercise, and you don't have to go crazy.
Walk.
Just,
anything, just move.
Yeah, get out for a walk.
Tybo.
Yeah, whatever, something that's effective for you. Don't force yourself to do something that you're going to be miserable doing. You said I got to exercise, so I'm going to run on the treadmill for 3 hours. No,
20 minutes a day if it's just consistent.
If you told me to do that, I would be mad and I'd be worse off. But yes, any type of movement is good. Also, try to remember to take a look at the big picture. We as human beings tend to hyper focus on the bad, because that's what's going to hurt us, and on the things that we did wrong so that we don't do them again, And you guys have probably heard me say before that, in a call where 100 things went right, I am going to go home and sit on the couch and dwell on that one thing that I did wrong for hours, and it's going to ruin my day. But so try to remember to look at the big picture. Hey, maybe this part didn't go right, but here's the stuff that did go right, and in the grand scheme of things, we did more good than harm.
Yeah.
That's important. One word that comes up often is spirituality, and we all have different definitions of spirituality. But get in touch with your spirituality, whether that's through religion, You know, maybe you want to talk to a pastor or a priest about some things that are bothering you. You know, if that means going out and taking a walk through a forest and getting in touch with nature or Mother Earth or whatever, you know, however you define it, take some time to get in touch with your spirituality and kind of tied in with that big picture, you know, why we do what we do and what's going on in the grand scheme of life, you know. So another one is, and one that I have struggled with personally, and that is when you, it kind of ties in with the compassion fatigue. When you take on too much of someone else's pain, if you will, you know, sometimes that's hard to get rid of and that's hard to shed, and you end up, you know, clinging to that and taking it home with you, and it affects your home life and so on. And I still struggle with it, but I've gotten a lot better about kind of, and you kind of touched on it, Phil, about leaving work at work and not taking that home with you. You have to find a way to leave work at the station, and when you hit that front door of your house, it's got to be gone, or it's going to impact your relationship with your wife and kids and so on. I had a great therapist that I was talking to about this, and she said when you get in your truck at the end of the shift in the morning and you're getting ready to go home, she said, think of the last 24 hours as a coat. And she said, I want you to get in that truck and take off your coat and leave it in your truck. When you get home, you leave that there. And it was, you know, it was a good metaphor for taking whatever was bothering me and just leaving it behind. It worked for me. You know, again, it's not going to work. Yeah, it's not going to work for everyone, but and it's still a struggle. But yeah, learn to do work at work and home is home, and keep the two separate.
Well, it's because, like, possible. You know, because at the, you know, when we do reach retirement, get to that point, right? The job, you're going to walk away from the job, and you're essentially, at the end of the day, you're a cog in the wheel, right? You'll get replaced and stuff, and somebody's going to fill your spot, and you're going to be gone, and then that's it.
Yes.
The department said, but your family, when you're gone from here, your family's still going to be there, and if you burn those bridges and ruin that. So when you walk away from here and then you've burned this stuff with your family, and now you really are.
Yeah, you don't want to get replaced both places.
No, that's just it. Right. Well, I'm just, you know, you don't want, you want to have that, because your family's going to be there when you leave this place, and you want to have that, you know, because that's what's going to be important, because those are the people that should mean the most to you and will be there when you're done being a firefighter. So why ruin that stuff?
And
because,
we could
you know, some people don't get that. You know what I mean? Don't have that.
We could all name probably 5 or 10 guys that have been on the department that didn't realize that, and you know, this fire department was their whole life, and now they're paying for it, if you will. But you know, I think I mentioned it in one of my classes, but I love the question, who are you without this fire department? You know, I think that's a question that you have to ask yourself, and you have to answer it honestly, because if you are struggling to come up with an answer, you might want to make some changes, because you're headed towards that road of you know, you know, if this department is all that you have, it's not going to last forever.
You know,
and guess what, guys and gals, it is not all that you have. It is a big part of who you can be. And there's a lot of great things it has to offer. But remember, you're an individual, and you have a life outside of here, and that's good to remember. And that was hard for me. Sorry to talk about me.
No.
Just because my whole life's been around this, and it's been such a huge part embedded in me, which I'm thankful for. But I've still made myself expand my horizons and try other things to do and to separate, like Lieutenant Phil was talking about. You have to. You absolutely have to, and if you don't, it will consume you. With or without you, this department will go on and
never miss a beat. And that's just the way it works.
That's how you have to think about it. And like you said, Lieutenant, that was imparted on me by someone who didn't realize that until it was too late, and they were very open about that. Do not be like me. there is a right way and a wrong way to do this career path.
Yeah.
In this aspect, focus on your family. Focus on yourself.
Yep. And a lot of people we work with
it'll all come together when it's supposed to.
Yes.
We hold this job in such high regard. You know, we were talking earlier about making the list and how excited you are and how great of a feeling it is, because you're like, oh, it's relief. I'm here for the next 20, 30 years, whatever it may be. We hope we put it on a pedestal. We're thankful for it because we knew how bad we wanted it at one point and what it does and what it provides for our life.
Yes.
So with that, it's easy to take for granted being a brother, being a brother, sister, husband, wife, something so simple. You're like, well, it's like, what are you with outside the job? Well, you say, well, I'm a brother. Like, that may sound like nothing, but that is still huge, right? And so that's what I think it's a good example of. What are you outside of this? Being a good brother, being a good husband, wife, whatever it may be. You being good at those things too. You don't have to be a pilot and a firefighter and an astronaut and a doctor.
Yes,
it's not like that.
I take way more pride in calling myself a dad than I do a firefighter. Yeah. You know, that's I'm so incredibly proud to be a firefighter, and it's you know, again, it changed my life completely. But it's not going to last forever, and it's not my identity.
You're still going to have to be a dad when you retire from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're still a firefighter. You are
always will be, but it's different.
Your first role is priorities.
Yeah.
But for sure.
So
awesome. What else we got?
Great stuff.
We have a good talk here.
You can tell your passion for people and the job is second to none. And
well, thank you. Yeah.
It's awesome having you here to talk about some of this stuff and how I think you're the perfect fit for DJ stepping down from that head.
Yeah.
Your support. He didn't really know what he was doing. And you're doing great. No, I'm just kidding. No. Captain Wynn did a phenomenal job.
He got the train on the tracks going.
You are going full steam ahead though with it.
Yeah, thank you.
That can be said. He did a great job.
Yes.
Getting it
and is still on the team
and is still doing a great job. Yes. But you're doing great as well.
Yeah, and part of that is the people that are on the team. It's an incredible. You know, it's a team. It's a group of people that have chosen to be there, and they know that it's not going to be like a rig committee team or you know, uniform, whatever. You know, it's this is something that requires a little bit more, and the people that are there understand that. So great people, and if DJ and the chief had not been behind it 100% from day one, we wouldn't be where we are today. So all credit goes to them. I walked into a pretty sweet thing, and I love doing it.
Awesome.
So,
Philly, got anything else?
No, I was gonna say we're for a guy that thought was gonna wondering what he's gonna talk about for a while. I think we actually buried Lindblade's time. So
I love realizing that when people. We haven't had many guests. We're only episode 5. When people come on and then they kind of discover how much there is to talk about and how much it's really get it going. But how this happens at work all the time. That's kind of the experience we're going for here. Yeah.
It's hard. I personally think it's hard to talk about yourself.
It's pretty darn well.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot to open up,
which we're thankful for, by the way. Yeah. I mean, you're not just imparting your stories and your personal struggles
it's
with
a
us.
This
is now locked in time, and this is locked in.
Yeah, it's going to be on the interwebs forever.
So we really appreciate your sharing. It means I think people can take a lot of stock in it.
Yeah. I've had a blast. I hope
it's been fun.
Maybe you can have me back as a guest speaker sometime, or guest
host
for sure.
We'll see.
Like I said, Paul, I've always enjoyed working with you. I love you. You got a dry sense of humor to you.
Oh my God, yeah, that's one of the. I forgot that about resiliency is the dark humor.
Just like a
that
really
could be a
subtle
whole show.
That could be.
We'll save that.
Yeah.
Save that.
We'll save that for part 2.
This is this has been great. I love hearing not only the podcast, but then just at work, hearing these stories from the senior guys, and that's why I'm happy we found a way to take some of this, put it into a little show here for the people that care, and it's been good. So with that being said, thank you for being on today. We'll have to do it again sometime.
We will. Yeah, and, thank you for having me. It's awesome.
That being said, I'll have Ryan drop the tones and
drop them.
We'll get out of here.